Hey, what's up, everybody watching? Sean from Draft Therapy here, and we're live. Hopefully, you can hear me. If you can hear me, just send me a little message in the chat there, so I know the audio's working. I wouldn't want to have to reintroduce. And yeah, so this is Draft Therapy Live. It's a little bit of a different experience because generally I do these by myself, but today I've got a special guest. I have Zach Clark from Craft Beer Conversations. Gonna bring Zach in here. Zach, how are you?
Sean, thanks for having me, man. Super excited to be
Yeah,
here.
I'm excited to talk to you.
Heck yeah.
Tell us about you. So, Craft Beer Conversations. Tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah, so this started, I work for WWJ News Radio 950, and this started back in 2019. We were looking to get into something that appeals to a more young demographic, something a little more appealing to those that cut through, right? 18 to 50. And, I worked in Tucson, Arizona for several years, and we did something similar. It was called Tales from the Keg. But that one, I should say, was focused. It was a sales driven initiative. I worked at that time for a sports talk radio station. And so, a brewery would have to buy a spot, and then we would do the interview, and it was pretty sterile in a studio, right? It was fun, and it's what got me into craft beer, but I wanted to make sure that this one was completely different. So this one has no sales element to it. You can't pay to be on the podcast, and that was something that was really important. And I think sometimes when I reach out to breweries, they're apprehensive because they're waiting for me to say, hey, now can I have X amount of dollars so I can, right? Exactly. And I understand that you have to make revenue one way or the other, but I didn't want it to be sales driven from a brewery standpoint. That doesn't mean that sometime down the road there couldn't be sponsorship with it, but that would be from something else, right? I'm not going to have people buy, and I say that like it matters, like I have any control over what happens at the radio station, because I don't. But again, that's the concept. And so, and again, instead of doing it in the studio or over the phone, I go. And we started doing it in July of 2019. And, obviously the last 10, 11 months have been pretty different. For a while, I stopped doing it in March. I did things, I would do things over the phone, like ask brewers about their favorite beers from other places, or how people are adapting. I did one, I remember, with Andrew Blake, and it wasn't a gloating thing, but everybody was struggling. But then people that were able to access quick canning were not struggling at all. And so you got that different perspective. But since the restrictions were lifted the first time, I've been going out, and because they've continued to do, carry out online sales, I kept doing it during the second shutdown for bars and restaurants as well. I have no pull, I have no weight, but even though, one of my favorite things to do, people would always ask me, do you want to do this when we're closed? Assuming that it sounds better that way, but I always preferred to do it when it was open. You get that great hum in the background, the glasses, people talking, people moving around. You get that great energy in the tap room. But I felt that whatever I could do, it was important to keep doing it during the second shutdown, because one of the things that a lot of us have been thinking is, whenever this is over, we want to make sure that our favorite places are still there when
Right.
this is over. And so it's the least that I could do, I think, that anybody can do, is to reach out and support. So that's the goal here, is to connect with people and breweries, and I try to go big, small, all over the place. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and there's a lot of similarities between I think what you're doing and then what I'm trying to do. Like you said, there's for me, for this channel, there's no boundary. You could be a brewery that barrels or bottles, brews one barrel a year, or I mean, of course, I'd prefer maybe go a little bit bigger, but
Right.
or you know the sky's the limit. So I think I wanted to have you on because I think your podcast is really interesting. You ask really good questions, and I think it's really interesting to kind of get, the personalities behind these places, because a lot of times you just see a beer on a shelf and you're like, oh, okay, well, let's try that out. So yeah, I mean, that was the whole impetus behind me doing this channel, was to kind of get stories behind beer. And I think you captured that really well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, one of the great things is people say, oh, Zach, this person sounded great, or man, I love the way that sounded. And, we do at the radio station interview after interview after interview. And I said before, I did sports talk radio. I hosted in several markets my own shows. And so, I mean, I've been interview after interview for years. And the easiest ones that I ever do are these. I mean, getting a brewer to talk about their product, maybe getting to the brewer sometimes isn't always the easiest thing, but once you get in the room with them, I mean, I feel like no matter what kind of preparation, I mean, and I always do it, I'm always ready, but the conversation is carried by whether it is a brewer or somebody that manages operations or the owner or whatever. And you're right, there are all kinds of great stories. And like most restaurants, breweries, small businesses, they were started in somebody's garage or an idea after a night out, or a passion project, or a semi-retirement project. There's almost always, and there are some like investment style breweries, and that's fine too, right? There's nothing wrong with that as long as the product is there. But there are so many great stories. And one of the things that I found, I don't know about surprising, but how many husband and wife teams there are. I mean, I feel like, I don't know if it's 50-50, but man, the amount of, and it just goes to show you what it takes to run a brewery, especially if you have different things going on. If you have a restaurant, I mean, I say this all the time, and every brewer I've talked to has heard me say it. If you've got a great brewery, you could make the best beer ever. I mean, you could have replicated Pliny the Elder, but if my sandwich sucks, it's all I'm going to talk about. I'll never talk about that beer ever again, and I'm only going to talk about the sandwich. And so, you
or
add
the service or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever made me mad, right? And so, there's just so much that goes into it, and a lot of times, it's it's a family affair. Or I was at Copper Hop in St. Clair Shores this past week, and Ryan Balicki, one of the co-owners, and he runs the front of the house. He said, the staff they're like my family, and I hear that quite a bit. And it kind of dawned on me that if you're in a place and you don't, the employees don't have to be singing it. It's not North Korea, but if you're not in a place that's created that atmosphere with the staff, like, you that's probably not a place where you want to be. And the beer still might be okay, but you and I both know that the taproom experience, look, especially as adults, like, you only get so much free time, right? And so the time that you do have is valuable, and you got to have, if you go in person, you got to have that right experience. And so I love watching what goes into it and all the stories that come out of it. It's just, and now, you're seeing this younger generation. I mean, places like Lawrence Tech are teaching it. And so now you have this different kind of brewer that is not somebody that's your age, my age, older, that has been brewing all over the place. And that's how they learn, because how else were you going to learn? Now, you got a kid that's 23, and he technically is as good as anybody else. And they're probably going to be a little more bold, a little less restrained. And so, I mean, man, if you go to Ascension, there's no brewer over 35, right? I mean, they've got, and we're going to get into that in a second, and you see what happens. And that's not a knock against anybody. It just goes to show you that the stories range from what I'm talking about, like the husband and wife team and I've been homebrewing forever, to these young people that are like, let's do this. And they find the right opportunity, and it just happens. And so I just, living here, we're lucky. There are great beer scenes all over the country. Craft beer has exploded, but you'd be hard pressed to do too much better than this. I mean, you make strong cases for Colorado, California, the Pacific Northwest. Some of those hop varietals. But I mean, come on, what a waste to not enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of, so I'm going to do something that I don't generally do, and I don't think I've ever done with any guests before. John Farner's in the audience, and I don't think he's been on a couple times, and I don't think we've ever done this. But what we did is Zach and I met, and we exchanged some beer. So we actually we're going to have the same beer.
Yeah,
we're going to have the same beer. We're going to be able to try it at the same time. We're going to be able to talk about it at the same time. I know
this is a great idea.
Mind-blowing stuff here, right? You know, changing the world. So since you're the guest, I'm going to let you pick into your magic hat, and you pull out the beer, and I'll fish it out of my magic hat.
All right. I'm going in.
All right. It's exciting.
All right.
And everybody out there, just the audience real quick, always ask this. Let us know in the chat what you're drinking.
Totally. I want to know what everybody else is having too. You mentioned John Farner. I love the phone beer. Like that's like on Twitter. That's like one of my all-time favorite things. The only problem that I have is they always do it on Friday and Saturday nights, which is, normal, except for I work on Friday and Saturday nights usually, and so I'm watching everybody drink great beer while I'm working and being lame. But anyway, I went there's one in the black can.
That's how I found this one.
Yeah. I'm Simple Creature. This is my precious, the New England style. I think it's a double dry hopped. And I mean, obviously you are the expert at the can reveal. So, but I mean, the stuff that the people at Ferndale Project and the Eastern Market Brewing Company, everything is just so pretty. I mean, they really do an excellent job with the aesthetic, and I appreciate that.
And this is, I don't know if you noticed, but this is like an Eye of Sauron, Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. See?
Homage.
Yeah.
I don't know. You might be able to get it closer. I'll get out of focus if I get too close, but.
Yeah, you can see. Wait, hold on. I'll do it wrong and I'll drop it, and then, yeah, there it is.
And all over the place.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty cool. It is so this is a double dry hopped with Nelson Sauvin, Rakau, and Kohatu.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever heard of any of those. I mean, not Nelson Sauvin, but.
Yeah, the last two are new to me as well. But again, I'm kind of a noob, so.
And this was canned on January 29th, 2020.
Oh my God, I can already see the top of it, and I'm very excited.
All right, let me crack
see,
this one open.
you have the fancy glasses. I need to up my game when it comes to the presentation.
Comes with the so I have this glass, and I've used it on like a video. It's a Bernie Sanders meme, Hayes for President.
Oh my God, that's great.
But I don't know. I didn't figure it was appropriate.
I am once again asking you for your best IPA. Oh yeah.
If you have anything hazy on tap, so let's crack this.
Oh man. I mean, I'm easily impressed. But I mean,
got a good smell.
Yeah.
Really thick.
Yeah.
Looking. It's hard when you pour it and you're kind of like, I'm looking to see I'm on, like when I just do it solo, obviously I have the whole thing to play with and I can readjust it however I need to. But when you're trying to do it on the fly and you're not able to see,
my fat head takes up a lot of space.
Well, I have so much empty space now, I'm not using the green screen because it'd be a little bit too.
I kind of like the all black background though.
Yeah, I'm working on getting some more lights, so some different lights, and maybe even changing not having a green screen at all. I don't know.
This is really good, by the way.
Really orangey, has a lot of citrusy kind of.
Comes out of the can like pineapple juice. That's good.
That's a good mango. It's not. It's so I've had a few lately that have been. The mango has been just riding the edge, and I don't know how you are with mango, but for me, mango can be one of those things where if it is if it's too much, it's too much. Right away that it's too much. So I've been liking that. I mean, I guess I've just gotten lucky, but the last few beers that I've had that have had a mango element to them have not been like crazy mango, just over the top nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few flavors you can get away with going overboard, right? Like, I think you talk about mango. I don't think that's one of them, but I think with something like orange I mean, it's hard to be, because I mean, to me, when we're talking about craft beer, and this will probably anger some, and maybe that's fair, but if we're talking about when people just say citrus, to me, what they're saying to me is orange.
Yeah.
They don't mean lime. They don't mean lemon. They don't mean grapefruit. They mean orange. And so to me, it feels like
Generally.
you get away with a little more orange. But I agree with you that too much mango, and then it just becomes everything. It's like all encompassing.
Yeah, and what I like is that it has that mango element, but it also has like sometimes when you get in the New England territory, you can get just too much. It can just be too much. It's too smooth almost. It's like I like. I mean, I like malty IPAs. I like IPAs of all different stripes, but I like New England's when they have that little bit of malty, or not maltiness, a little bit of that hoppy bitterness.
The bite. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like them very smooth too, but this one kind of it has just it's not overly bitter, but it's smooth, but it lets you know it's there. It's not too much. Everything's just right.
Well, and that's one of the things that I like with the Ferndale project is they are so good at towing the line that they always can get right there. And that's what's great about having two breweries, but not the same concept, right? I think what they've done is great, allowing them to have two different approaches, and then they can cross pollinate almost, and the things they're able to come up with and the risks they're able to take. I mean, those folks are ambitious, and I really enjoy it, and especially with what they've done with delivery and then the pizza and the coffee, and
Yeah, they Eastern Market and Ferndale, for those not aware, they're owned by they're under the same umbrella basically. I think Eastern Market's considered like the parent of Ferndale, but Ferndale, I believe, is where they do the major part of the production.
Yeah, because it's bigger.
Right. And then Eastern Market's more of kind of like I think, all the Eastern Market beer, I think, for the most part, the stuff that they serve in the tap room, I believe, is all brewed at Eastern Market. But they just have a really talented group there that, I said this on the yard sale video, is that they're aiming to do 2 new beers a week. And I think that's pretty crazy. I mean, they're not small by any means, but they're not huge.
Well, that's the thing is, we were talking about adapting during the pandemic, and one of the things that they did was start 10 businesses in 10 days, right? And so they're not afraid. That's one of the great things about brewing and breweries is the restraint. There's got to be some of it, and I'm the jamming all kinds of flavors, and it's not necessarily that what I'm talking about, but the lack of restraint usually ends up paying off. And again, that second arm, that Ferndale project, they take a lot more risks. I mean, some of the flavors they play with, some of the things they do, man, I would have loved. And I think that, though, this one might have been from Eastern Market. I think it was. I was too slow on the Punchki beer. I was bummed. Next year, I got to be quicker to the draw.
Well, you mentioned that, and then I saw that they were going to put it out, and then I think by the time I saw that they were going to put it out, it was gone. It's already gone. And Griffin Claw did a Punchki beer this year too.
Yeah, and the folks
at
at
Pigeon Hill
in Muskegon. Yeah.
So back to kind of your interviewing prowess style. When you go into a place, do you have like a list of questions that you're going to ask, or do you is it an even mix of, I have these establishing questions, I'm going to listen to the response, and then I'm going to kind of branch off of that? Is it all do you have them in your head that you're going to say, I need to ask them this? How does that process work for you?
So I always have a list of questions. I've got a little notepad that comes with me, but you can't just stick to the questions as if it's a script. I learned long ago from people far more talented than I am that the greatest skill an interviewer has is the ability to listen. And so, I'm there to guide the conversation, not in the way that I think it should go, but I'm there to facilitate the conversation. And there are always things that I want to know, but usually when I go, almost always when I go, I ask if I could see the brew house. I always ask for a tour, and I always end up with so many more questions afterwards. You learn a lot when you go on the tour of the building. They talk about the brew house. A lot of times buildings involve certain kinds of build outs. It's not like, there's a brewery store and you walk in and you're like, hey, I'll take this base model. And so, I always get through all of my questions, but sometimes I'll ask them a little differently. Sometimes some of the questions will be answered amidst other questions.
Right, during a previous.
Mm-hmm. So, but no matter what I've done in radio, interviewing has always been my favorite part. And so I really enjoy the process of preparing, right? Like, you go to the website, you go to the socials, you go to Untapped, I usually go to the Google machine and read the, see if I, see how many articles I can find, read, maybe it's about releases, maybe it's about an expansion, maybe it's from when they opened, because I'm curious, I want to know. And like we talked about earlier, there's always great stories, but sometimes you have to find them. Oftentimes it's not that hard, right? Whether it's in a random name or whatever, but just the process of getting ready for an interview is, I just really enjoy the whole process.
You don't adopt the Larry King approach. The Larry King approach.
Yes.
He has no clue. He doesn't do any prep. He's just like, I think that my favorite, not to, get too far off topic, but my favorite Larry King moment is the Seinfeld interview.
He was so mad.
He didn't know who he was. No, he had no, I mean, he probably knew who he was, but he had no clue about anything. No. Like why he was there. Are you promoting something? Your show got canceled. What are you talking about? The show's not canceled. So
Jerry's like, on television. Yeah. So, I mean, and Larry King, maybe he's always done that. And there are people, I used to, a different station when I was in Arizona, I worked across the hall from this guy. It was Political Talk. And he was masterful. And he did the same thing. Nothing. He would just walk into the room, into the building, like the music starts to play for its show, and he's like walking into the door downstairs. And right by the time the music rolls out, like he's throwing his bag on the floor, and for 4 hours, it was just. And I watched it. It was just like, oh my God! But that's not who I am. I mean, I can conduct an interview without notes, but I feel better when I'm ready. It's just always been part of the way it's worked for me. Yeah, you kind of hit your stride. You hit a stride basically. You have your kind of get your style, get your feet under you, and that's just makes most sense for you. Right. I mean, you could even sometimes, like you said, you can't always follow what's in front of me. But you have it. It's almost like a security blanket. I just know it's there. Yeah, I don't do a lot of interviews. I mean, obviously, I don't know if this doesn't really feel like an interview. I don't know. But I feel like I'm a little bit of a mix of both. I go in a little bit confused. I have some questions I run through in my head like 10 times, like, oh, I'm going to ask about this and maybe this. And then, like you said, you kind of listen, you pick up some cues on, hey, let's talk about this other thing. Mm-hmm. Do you find, I know for me, like trying to get into tap rooms, I mean, now it's kind of, I don't know, it seems like it's hard and it might be a little easier because, less, maybe with more people coming into tap rooms, it might be, again, a little bit harder to get time, that one-on-one time with a brewer. But do you find when you try to get access or you try to talk to somebody at a brewery about their brewery, do you find that you get a lot of pushback? Like how's that work out? So, I mean, it's funny as far as like setting these things up, like I said earlier, once I get in the door, it's always great. I've never been like, oh my God, that was horrible. I mean, obviously some are better than others and some are not nearly as good as others, but I've never had like an all around bad experience at any of these. But I'll tell you, sometimes just the way that breweries operate, it can be difficult to get a hold of somebody that is in a position. I mean, because especially now things are different because they're opening again, but you can't, when the brewery is closed and the tap room is closed, who are you going to call? Right.
Yeah.
And so if they
Right.
don't respond to the email, if they don't respond to the Facebook post, and everybody runs their socials differently, and some of those emails go God knows where. And so, it is a challenge sometimes getting through. And I will say, I talked earlier about the sales thing. I did learn over the last 6 or 8 months. I don't know if it's made a difference or not, but I always do mention, like, also, I'm not asking for money just in case. Cause I don't,
Yeah. Like up front, you almost have to say that.
I've started because I get it. Like, if that's what I thought that was, I probably wouldn't respond either.
Do you have, you pretty much have dealt up to this point. It's in like Metro Detroit area, right?
Yeah. I mean, the furthest, what shoulder is it? That one. Frankenmuth. I can never be a weather person. That's too confusing.
Tell me about it.
But I mean, yeah, for the most part, I mean, I think Frankenmuth, though from where I am, it's not all that far. But yeah, other than that, for the most part, they've all been in the area. Because we started doing this late in the summer at 19. One of the things I was going to do this past summer was do, like, I'd probably, if I could do it like in a week, go to like 4 different places, whether it's in Traverse City or Saugatuck, and then like summer road trip, and then you'd release them once a month, May, June, July, August. But obviously, with everything that's happened and over the last, I had, my passport had expired. But I maybe about a year ago, it was right before all this, like 12, 13 months ago, I renewed that. So at some point I would love to do some of the ones just across the bridges. I know there's a couple in Windsor, and I think there's at least one in Sarnia. And so, and I've, cause some of my favorite ones have been a little more off the beaten path. One of the cool things about doing this is it pushes me all over the place.
Yeah, that. I've always had this idea that I would really like to do like a road trip video, where going to a couple, like definitely before I started recording the beer reviews, it was like I had went out to the Grand Rapids area, went to the West Coast, and hit up places like Oddside, and
I love Oddsides or Outside.
Grand Armory, that area. I don't think we went to Holland, so checked out New Holland, checked out someplace else in Holland. It was like, I think it was like a long weekend and hit like 7 or 8 places. And I really want to do, when we can go out and do that. I did a little video about the UP Beer Fest up in Marquette, and that was kind of like a little bit of a travel video, but it was maybe just the intro and the outro were kind of like the traveling part. And the rest was me just kind of going around the festival and just kind of talking about the beers that I tried from places that might not can, or places that, maybe you haven't tried a beer from them or you weren't aware of them. So that was kind of like the video idea that I put out. Are there, for you, maybe Michigan, we'll keep it Michigan kind of based. Is there like a holy grail, maybe like a 3 or 5 breweries that you would really like to talk to somebody about, but you haven't been able to get a chance to do that yet? Yeah.
Oh, it's a great question. Well, I can tell you one right off the bat is Cunin. I haven't done that one yet. And, I in the back of my head, big head, small brain, I've saved like the quote unquote bigger ones. Cause at first I was like, great, we'll just think of the most popular ones. But then I thought to myself, wait a second, like we've got to sustain this. So Cunin it's got to be number one, especially because I live in Romeo. I'm from Macomb County, and the Drippa is just. I know that's a sucker answer because it's just so good, but and then I've been pretty fortunate to do quite a few of them. I'll give you another one that I'd like to do, and it's not quite in the metro area, but it's Warwater. I've heard nothing but good things. up in Port Huron, right? And I like to, like I said, I like to stretch a little bit and really get out and uh, and explore it, because there are so many great options. And one of the things you mentioned in Michigan, I do want to do more distance type stuff, right? Like I do want to get to Oddside, or at some point I would love to go, even though it's I don't know if it's cliche, but get to Founders and to Bell's, and just to be able to walk through and talk about it. It's because it's not always necessarily about showing people something they've never seen before, right? Because that's not, I'm not the beer pioneer, right? That's not who I am. I'm not the beer explorer. I'm not the most experienced guy in the room. I'm just looking for I want to share the experience. I want to share the vibe, the flavors, and not, not being the expert makes my job a lot easier. I let them be the expert. That sometimes you get what questions are you going to ask, and I always answer. There's nothing that I could ask you that you're not going to know more about than I am. Nothing. It's your brewery. This is your beer. This is what you do. So. But so if it was 5, I would say, because I still, like I said, Cunin I still haven't done. Bell's, Founders, Oddside. I really want to get out and stretch a little more
outside of Metro Detroit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I mean, and I'm not saying that I've been everywhere. Because I mean, if we're talking a little more locally, I haven't been to Drafting Table. I haven't been to Kickstand. Right. There are still places around here that I want to go. So,
there's still places around here that I want to go.
Right. And that's the thing, they're opening constantly. I was at Loaded Dice a couple of weeks ago. I was at Arctic Circle last month. There's one going in, what is it called? In Oak Park, right on, it's at 11 Mile right there. It's in a strip, but anyway. So I mean, they're popping up all the time, and obviously, I don't know if the rate will continue. I don't know. You talk to people about opening a business now and things are different, but maybe they will. I don't know, because that's such a tough question.
I mean, it seems like, for a time it was every time you turned around, oh hey, the city that I'm in is getting a brewery, or this place. There were also some places that were closing, but it seems, I mean, obviously with everything going on now, it seems like it's slowed down a little bit, but it also seems like, as good a time as ever, especially I feel like the places that can, the places that can, either sell from their storefront, or some place that can, self-distribute, it's really obviously taking off, because people obviously aren't drinking in these establishments so much, but, it just, it seems like now's a really great time. And it also kind of is amplified by the fact that places, that do delivery, Ascension does delivery, Ferndale Project does delivery, several places do delivery. And I just mentioned Ascension and Ferndale Project and EMBC because those are, places that we're going to talk about today. But so many places offer delivery that it's almost like you don't need necessarily even to be in a store. Obviously, you have to have some kind of name or some kind of recognition for people to know that you have beer available. But it's not like the old days where if you had this cult following in your neighborhood, those kind of places are probably really hurting. There's a place by me that they don't have really much of a canning system. They don't have any distribution. The only way that you can get their beer, now with the 25% or the igloos or whatever they have outside, you can kind of get and get beer that way. But places that don't have that, if you're not able to sell it out the door, you're really limited as to what you can do.
Yeah, and I mean, I think as we move forward, and as you talk about new breweries, as things open, as things push forward, you wouldn't open a brewery today and not do those things. You wouldn't. I don't think today, because I talked to Eric and Devin at Arctic Circle, and I asked them, it's like canning, and they're like, well, not immediately, but we're working on it, right? They talked about their stretch goal, and because I mean, again, growlers are great, and I love collecting them because who doesn't like big things that are fragile and serve no other purpose than to take up
Right.
space. Anyway,
Totally utilitarian, obviously.
totally, yeah, because I definitely need 30 of these. But it's not enough, right? Like, growler fills are great, but the ability, I mean, if you look at the beers that you have in your cooler and that I have in mine, what do we have, like, total, like 2 growlers worth, a growler and a half worth? But there's 6 different beers in my cooler, right? And if it
Right.
was a growler, they can't, it's not like it's not like they're sectioned off and it's like half a growler of this and half a growler of that.
Well, they
And
separate, so you can just pour
yes,
the top
or
off
like
and they're good.
it's like oil and water, yeah,
Yeah.
or
It's like a
vinegar and
black and
oil.
tan.
Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't want that? So yeah, I think as and eventually, kegs will come back. I know right now, people are only, if you're kegging, it's just for you, right? I don't know how many people
Right.
are shipping kegs outwards. I know that some bars obviously are open, places like 8 Degrees Plato or just your neighborhood random non-brewery bar that are still picking up kegs here and there. M4
Sure.
CIC still distributing, but I mean, it's not, the volume of kegs right now. I mean, I got to imagine somewhere, many places, there's just like piles of kegs sitting somewhere in a corner.
I wanted to take a quick second to kind of go back through the chat. I'll show this one here. Randy asked me, when I said my local brewery, he asked if I was talking about Liberty Street. I'm actually talking about Canton, because I think that
I love Liberty Street, by the way.
I don't know how they were getting, like, that street that they're on Liberty Street. They had part of that blocked off. There's a bar that's like 5 doors down, or it's on the
It's a
corner.
really
They're
popular
almost on it.
one.
Yeah, Herman's.
Yeah,
They're like on opposite corners. So, but like Liberty, I mean, I don't know how much a small brewery like that has. They used to bottle, and I want to say that the facility that they used to have for their bottling, which was like maybe 2.5 years ago at this point, is now the brewery Fazan, which is in Detroit, which is like a Belgian-inspired brewery.
That's another one you mentioned. You asked me that I'd like to. That would be on my list as well.
It's really interesting, that whole situation that they have going on there.
Yeah.
But Liberty sells off that piece. I think that I like I said, don't quote me on that, but I think that was like their bottling facility, and now they don't have that. So it must be really tough. They have a really small, besides that Liberty Street area that they had blocked off, that again was mostly, I think, used by Herman's. I find it hard to figure out how, it must be really difficult to stay open without having any distribution, you have to have a really loyal customer base, a really loyal following to be able to sustain a business like that.
Yeah, and I think that, if you talk to brewers, and I can't speak for all of them, and I have been to Liberty, but maybe this was 10 months ago, maybe. I think it was during COVID, but I can't. Time is lost. We've been living in the space.
5 minutes, 5 years. Who knows?
We've been living in the space between Christmas and New Year's for 11 months. I don't know. But you hear, you don't want to be too dramatic, but like you hear like these harrowing tales of customers doing all kinds of things, dropping off checks, asking what you need, buying crazy amounts of gift cards. I mean, because again, I said it earlier, we want to make sure our favorite places still exist whenever we're able to exit whatever this is. And, it looks like at this point, and I can't tell, and there's probably more to come, but it feels like we haven't hemorrhaged a ton of breweries. Again, I know that it's not been a clean sweep as far as everybody being able to chug ahead, but it's not like I've seen, places closing left and right. It doesn't feel like it. And if I'm wrong, please roast me in the chat box. But
I feel like it's go ahead.
I know that there's been some talk about like Brooks and things like that, but I feel like for the most part, the people that they'll do whatever they can to make sure that, and look, if you can get in a can, you're doing okay, because people.
Yeah.
I mean, if you listen to we had a study on our station the other day, and it was like, the drinking is increased by 87%, and then it's like we talked to 3,000 Americans. I'm like, there's like 400 million people. I'm not sure that's a big enough sample size, but but there's no doubt that alcohol sales, packaged liquor sales, are up. So again, if you can get into a can, I live out here in Romeo, and in the middle of almost literally nowhere, Blake's is turning out cans like Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory 24/7 is just popping out of there. So again, or you go to a place like Witch's Hat in South Lyon or Ascension, or again, if you can get into a can, and now there's been a run, because at first, I don't think I have it up here, but there was a run on growlers. I have a couple clear growlers because people couldn't find brown glass. I have a clear one from Dearborn, and now they're having a hard time getting cans.
Yeah, and Hop Slam goes to bottles this year because of the can shortage, and I understand a place like Bell's that they're going to churn through a ton of cans, especially for something like Hop Slam that's limited. But that kind of reminds me of when I talked to the people at Ferndale Project. They had, I think the can thing is a little bit overblown. Like, I think that there is a shortage, and I think certain places have access. It's like you almost have to know a guy. I'm like, I know a guy. We're going to get a bunch of cans. So that whole thing seems crazy.
And I think that they're there. And for example, by the way, EPS, I work for WWJ there. I was at Loaded Dice a couple weeks ago, and Jeff Smith we had that black can, right? But I mean, obviously this can is not one piece.
Yeah.
Right. Well, he had some black cans, but did not have all. And so the inner top was different than, but I mean, again, I know aesthetic is if you are fighting for shelf space at 8 Degrees Plato or at Steampunk or at wherever, but if you're Jeff, who cares what the can looks like?
Right. Yeah, so, a place that's not on the shelf.
I agree, overblown. Yeah.
If it's someplace where presentation's super important, then I can see it. But like you're saying, if it's a local place that happens to sell beer outside of that, that distribution model, then just give me the beer. I don't care. It could be exaggerating. It could be cellophane on the top. You can give it to me in a Ziploc bag. Yeah. As long as I get to try it and it works out, and that's all it matters to me.
Right. And if you look at, and I don't want to disrespect the canning, because if you look, they still have great labels. I got to tell you, at first when I saw the Loaded Dice, and I was like it felt like it was a little much, but then once I started reading what he was doing and the way he was doing it, now I can't get enough of it. Like, I love the to me, the future bets. And I know this wasn't a product of his creation, but the ability to buy futures in a barrel aged, I'm awesome. Like, cut me in. I think that's great. That's
a really good idea.
It is, especially when I think it's a good idea because, one, it's something that people want, but also you get to sell the beer before it goes anywhere. I mean, there's an organic farm. I live in Romeo, so right, and there's an organic farm like a couple miles away, and you can buy, like, right now, you can, for whatever it is, let's say it's $1,000, you give them $1,000, and every week you get a percentage of everything they harvest, right? So like you show up on every Monday during the summer, and they hand you like a basket of vegetables. But if they have some kind of crazy freeze, they keep your money, you get no vegetables. And so if Jeff's keg explodes, again, please don't. That's not what's going to happen. I don't want to. Hey, Zach Clark said that your keg. I want my money back. No, I just it gives you the ability to get cash when you need it, even if it's just a little bit. And Lord knows, right now, who doesn't need it,
right?
And I'm totally with John. I think we talk about Ascension or Ferndale Project, places that are really pushing it, and Jeff Smith is crazy. He's doing these performer series, right? Because everything is like gambling Vegas based. And the one that came out today, I can't remember what it's called. My apologies, but it's a carrot sour. It's about Carrot Top. It's got this bizarre label, and Carrot Top's so scary looking. And I don't like the can because it's scary. But like those flavors, I think are great. And again, you talk about his wife too, as we were talking at the beginning of this about the husband and wife team, and she's super involved. And the other day their dog was there. Like, give me all that kind of stuff. Like, I just love breweries like that. And I know places like that are smaller and kind of, I don't know if you can be off the beaten path on Rochester Road, but he's kind of in this little off spot. And this is no secret, but one of my favorite restaurants is right down the road, the Manjan Lao, right there on 15. So good. Anyway, but I know that they've struggled with just indoor space. It's just tough, kind of tucked away, but they're going to get going. And somebody asked about the Detroit Beer Exchange. I'm excited for that one too. I don't think it's open yet, and if it is, I think that just happened. Because that was a project that began in Grand Rapids. I think it's not their first venture.
What about Kalamazoo?
Is it Kalamazoo? Is that where it was?
I
couldn't remember, but it looks like they're doing like wood-fired pizza and bottle shop. I'm super curious. I think places like that are great.
When everything gets a little bit more settled down. That was a place in Kalamazoo that I always had heard about. Like when I went to Western for a little bit, and I wasn't of drinking age at the time that I went there.
Everybody's of drinking age in Kalamazoo.
That's true. Had some bad experiences, but had some good experiences too. I still remember them, surprisingly. But that was a place that's like, I really want to check this place out. I want to try all this stuff. Did you just finish your beer?
Yeah.
Well, that means it's time for another one.
Because I didn't want to lag too far behind.
That's right. I'm looking. I have two. If anybody's wondering, like, why is he looking at all these different places? I've got like two screens. So I'm gonna reach into the bag.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna. I'm gonna look as much at this screen as I had to look down so I didn't fall off this stool. But I'm not gonna look, and I'm just grabbing one in here, and this is what I grabbed.
What is it?
Should we switch it up? This is another Ferndale project. Chat. Let us know. Should we switch this up? Because we just had My Precious from Ferndale Project. This is Solo Copper, another Ferndale Project beer.
What do you think? Yeah. What do y'all think?
Should grab another one that's not. I'll leave this one out, so it's not part of the.
Grab another one.
You think I should grab another one?
Well, nobody in the chat's saying anything, so it's up to us, I guess.
True. Well, it could be a delay. I mean, there's like a zillion people watching this. It's pretty popular.
Grab
All
another.
right. There we go.
It is.
Grab another. Okay, I'm looking. Right. I'm looking at you. Moving this cam. I'm looking at you. All right. Randy says he wants to see something. I'm grabbing like outside of the thing. All right. Hold on. Oh, I knocked it over. Oh, no, that was an ice pack. Okay. All right. Ascension. Yes. Dripped out. Yes. I'm going to put this one back. Now I know. Well, you're going to pick the next one. But now I know where my... So the other brewery that we have Ferndale, we have Ascension, and we have Mothfire, which is in Ann Arbor.
I know where my Mothfire.
I am too. I know where the Mothfire ones are. But I don't know what order they are. So this is dripped out. This is I think this is a single IPA. Okay, it says IPA with Citra, Sabro, and Michigan Cashmere hops, brewed and packaged by Ascension Brewing Company, 7.3% alcohol by volume. This was canned on February 2nd, 2021, which, I usually say the date, but you like what date I'm doing this, but obviously you know what day it is, even though I don't. It says safe, #safe and effective. Sorry. And so that's the can art.
And while we're here, shout out, you talk about the can art, Dub Design, Greg Willett, shout out, one of the best.
Yeah. Greg does a lot of great, I really like, a lot of their can design has been this geometric shape stuff, and I'm glad to, and I know he does way more than that. Obviously, he did the Gorilla Juice cans, did the Donkey Kong styled Gorilla Juice last year.
Only cans.
Yeah, so I like to see that they're branching out from just doing the geometric stuff. I don't know how many people really care about design, can design, label design.
I'm a sucker. I'm such a mark when it comes to pretty things. I put Ascension right at the top. Witch's Hat, they have gorgeous cans, but my favorite will always be Oddside. They just, the artwork on those cans, it's always just so out there. I can't get enough of it. I love it.
Yeah, they're so varied. It's not, they don't have a particular style.
No, you never know what it's going to be.
Could be like some stick figure, could be like Nightman Leaveth, and then the next one you get could be something like, Hipster Brunch, where it's got all the psychedelic colors and everything.
And I can't remember what one it was because I have such a bad memory. It was a sour, but it was a black can, and it was just like, old cartoons when you would see like bats in the sky. It was just like eyeballs, like all over the. It was great.
Huh.
But I can't remember anything ever. So I switched glasses. So now we're going. Oh, here we go. Oh, that's
another, but it's another.
I was like, wait,
Bad
wrong
Boys.
One. No, this one. This is my favorite one. Farmer Jack.
Oh, Farmer Jack.
Yes.
Nice. So what do you get? I'm going to ask you real quick. I'm going to ask you. Hey, no pouring.
Oh, sorry.
You got to sniff it.
Oh, sorry. I'm so uncultured.
I know. What do you get on the nose?
So again with the Citra, right? But to me, this one is a little less, obviously, sans mango. This one to me smells fantastic. And again, look at how cloudy it is.
You got to hold yours up because Carlos in the chat earlier said that he thought it looked better in my glass, which I have to agree.
Well, yeah, because your glass is prettier.
Really, it's got a really odd color. It's not not really very yellow. I know the lighting for both of us is a little bit different, but it's almost like this brownish, like a khaki almost. The color itself is almost like a khaki. I got a little bit more of a floral aroma.
I got you.
Yeah, definitely like a
more floral taste.
Yeah, floral, like flowery, kind of almost like literal flour flowery too, like not just a flowery, but flowery
like the
as in the powder.
Yeah, there's like this flat kind of, but I think definitely you talk about the flower with the W. I mean, the cashmere hops in there are certainly hard to miss.
It's like there's a citrus, citrus orange. There's a bit of an orangey, but it's like a muted kind of orange, but it's you get that floral kind of note to it. And it almost does have like an oaty kind of, just a really enveloping kind of flavor. It's hard to put your finger on all the different elements that are in there.
That's the thing. They always have, there's just so much going on. I mean, this one has 3 different kinds of hops, and I mean, but I definitely get the Citra and the cashmere.
So this is so they did 3 New England styles, or 3 IPAs.
This is the single, right?
Yeah, this is a single. But they did a single, a double, and a triple, I think. And they mentioned in their email or on their social media post or whatever that it's part of a new IPA program. So you talked to them about like 2 or 3 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what this whole kind of program, what's involved in the program, or is it just kind of a marketing thing, or did you not get into it?
No, and I didn't get into it, and it's funny because one of the questions I always ask is what's ahead, like one year down the road, 5 years down the road, and that question's become a little more difficult because of the coronavirus, right? It's a little hard to see into the future, but when I asked them what their goals were, what they wanted to accomplish, it was more about being able to produce in larger volume, right? They want to be able to get more cans out there. They want to be able to crank more beer out. And so I didn't hear anything about a new style or approach. I'm wondering if it's just like, if they talk about like a new line, if they're going to do IPAs in like batches like this, if like, 2-3 months from now, it'll, because the last ones, what was the one that came in the 3 cans came together to make one? Oh, and I had that too. It was one of the ones I walked away with. Again, I'm useless when it comes to remembering anything, because I'm
Well, this had 3 like
I know. And
design. Yeah.
so I'm wondering if that's going forward, how they're going to release,
Oh, gotcha.
if like that's what it's going to be, if like this rolling, like multi-release. It's a great question. It's a great question. We'll have to reach out, because I love, again, the presentation, and that, when it's funny when you walk into Ascension, you see the brew house and you're like, okay, but then you get downstairs, you're like, all right, I get it.
Right. Yeah, it's a whole different experience from seeing that little, kind of cordoned off area that they do the actual brewing in, and then you go downstairs and you're like, oh yeah, okay.
And they say that even isn't enough. And I mean, I think,
I'm sure, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think Ascension is one of those, if it was like, I come from the sports world, if we're looking at like a team on the rise, right? Like, I think Ascension would be one of those that would be doing so quickly.
Yeah, they're definitely a shooting star, in the Metro Detroit area as far as beer goes. The only thing that I think that they've kind of put it behind them, but I know they've had issues in the past with canning. So kind of squishy cans, or, I personally have had problems with cans that have been leaky, or, other issues, but I think they've kind of dialed in, their releases. I have not heard for a while, at least a year, about any kind of issues. And I think it was all, it was new. They have their own canning line. It's a smaller line, so it's a little bit more of a manual process. And I think that, it's just learning the system.
Yeah. I mean, when I was there a month ago, I had I got a case, and I had no issue with anything as far as like canning and that kind of stuff goes. And but you're right, though, having the new system and having to adapt to those sort of things, but to me, the flavors are out of this world, especially I love this comment.
I had to feed that. That is the best part.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. I'm really looking forward to I'm looking forward to that sour.
And that sign, so everybody knows, Randy EP in the comments, he's the one that made the sign. The story behind that sign at Ascension is Randy made the sign. He took it there because he knew that's a place that I went, fairly often. And I think him and I have met at Witch's Hat, and he's like, I got your sign. It's at Ascension. And I went to Ascension like, hey, we got your sign. And I'm like, I don't have like this, despite the facade that looked like I used to have a wooden like pallet wall, this is like, obviously fabric. And I'm like, I can't hang that anywhere. And they're like, well, can we keep it? I was like, sure. I mean, that's awesome to have your, to have your thing out. So big ups to Randy for putting the sign together.
Yeah.
So he wanted to make sure he got credit for it.
Yeah.
I made that sign.
Props to you, Randy.
He found the font. So like the font that I use for the outro, and I used to use for the intro, it's not open source, but a royalty free font. Mm-hmm. He found the font, so he had the whole thing all set up. There was no interaction from me. He decided, boom. Yeah, that was really cool.
That's the way to be. Lobster font, he says.
Yeah, absolutely. The lobster font. That's awesome. That's yeah.
Love it. Love it.
I appreciate that.
That's the way it should be, though. Like that, and I'll tell you what, you talk about people like Randy, and one of the things that I've enjoyed so much, because I'm relatively new. I mean, I grew up here, but between 2007 and 2018, I lived mostly in Arizona, but I spent time in Arkansas and Texas too. My first job in radio was in Glenwood, Arkansas. So I've got about 10,000 stories there, but we'll do that later. Uh, it's a dry county. We'll just start there.
Oh, all right, nice.
Yeah, it's great. But
I can tell you really enjoyed it.
oh boy, it was the best. Actually though, I don't know if I wouldn't make the trade. The only saving grace, not the only, because the people were great too, but barbecue for everything, all the time, everywhere. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, church, football. It was the best. So we were talking about.
We're only 2 beers in.
I know. Well,
One
I
and a
don't
half.
need. I don't need any. My memory is garbage anyway. But I'm relatively new, right? My wife and I, we moved back in. Well, I shouldn't say we moved back. I moved back. She came with me. She's not from here. But in 2018, and so this whole Michigan beer renaissance, like I missed almost all of it, right? I mean, again, I was 22 years old in 2007, and I came back, and I'm in my early 30s, and the area has changed so much, right? I mean, I left right at the bottom. I mean, the bottom of Detroit, and just the fallout and the bankruptcy. But then I also missed the beginning, and hopefully it wasn't the entirety, because I mean, I'm concerned about downtown just in general. It had made such strides, and I just, with people not working down there as much, I wonder what the future holds while the neighborhoods still need help. Different story, but but I missed the comeback. I would always come back. My mom and dad still live here, and a lot of great friends here. But so I'm new relatively to the craft beer community, but what I learned right away is, I mean, I'm shocked at how open it is. And I talked about this. If you listened, shameless plug to my craft beer right there, if you listen to my Craft Beer Conversations podcast that came out today, with Ryan Balicki from Copper Hop, like, I don't know any other industry that is so open, sharing, helpful. We mentioned Loaded Dice. I mean, Jeff is open source brewing. I mean, could you imagine? Right. Could you imagine if KFC was like, all right, here are the 7 spices? Right? It's never going to happen, right? Here's the recipe for Coca-Cola. I mean, it's just, but in this world, and Ryan said to me, if you are not welcoming, helpful, you won't make it. That the reliance on each other in the community. And so you mentioned, EP, like, I think it's fantastic how everybody is just so open. It's just such a fun community to be around, and I love talking to people. And the more people I meet, the more I find out that more people know each other. And so I've really enjoyed, kind of from like an outside perspective looking in, observing the community, because there's just so many great people.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing with me. I don't participate much in a lot of like online discussion. I think you and I talked about this before this video, kind of like not watching a lot of other beer stuff on YouTube or what, because you get like that kind of osmosis of ideas, from watching other stuff. But that's the one thing that I've really enjoyed is, you go to a place, and I'm super low key. I like to sit when I could go to breweries, I like to sit at the bar, just kind of sit there and mind my business. But it's always cool to have people come up and talk to you. Or, I think when you talk to, was it Jeff when you talked to Jeff at Loaded Dice, he was like, yeah, that was the best part of when I was, kind of coming up. He said he would go to places and, want to talk to the brewer about, how did you do this? How did you do that? It's always been a very open and welcoming community. But I could see for someone, I always preface, like, I'm not an expert by any means. I just happen to have a camera, and I can edit a video. That's like what I can do. That's the only real difference. But I could see like an outsider, somebody that's not into beer, or someone trying to get into beer, that it could be really, it's almost like a walled garden. It can be really walled off. It can seem like there are a lot of gatekeepers, for that whole thing. But I think now, especially like New England style IPAs, you go to a place and they have stuff that's not even beer, they have seltzer or stuff that's so like on the fringe of being, yeah, being beer or an alcoholic beverage, it's almost like there's no better time. Like you think of someplace like Troubadour with the smooch thing, or with Ascension has thick, or with Eastern Market has bamboozle,
Yeah.
or other places have these. Arvon has their crazy. John Farner sent me a picture yesterday, and it's this crazy. It's like a double fruited sour, and it looks like a smoothie, but it's probably a little bit more on the beer side.
Can't even barely can those.
Yeah, I would think that would just clog up everything. But
Well, I mean,
you know,
one of my favorite social media accounts, Worst Beer Blog, you see exploding
yeah.
cans all the time.
But it's you're so adjacent to beer at that point. It's almost there's been no better time. There's always no better time than right now, right? No better time than right now to be, whatever, be a streaming service. But there's almost no better time than right now to get into beer, because there's so much adjacent stuff that can gateway, be your little guiding path into what you like.
Yeah, and I think the one thing, and I don't know if it's like somebody had a renaissance and was like, but it seems as if breweries have figured out that if they can offer, and she doesn't even know it, maybe she hear me right now, but I throw my wife under the bus for every craft beer conversation because she doesn't like. In fact, she detests beer. Nothing about it. Right? God bless her. But because of that, we and again in normal times we still want to go out together, and so I think breweries have figured out that if they can, the more things that they can offer, the longer people will stay. And I think a big part of it has been and these are separate things, but they play together, the cider and seltzer revolutions, right? I mean, I heard, I can't remember where it was, because again, as I've talked about in the last hour, I can't remember anything. They were describing seltzer, and they were like, well, Americans were looking for the next light beer, and somebody was like, how do we make it lighter? And they were like, remove the beer. And somebody's like, oh, that's genius. And they made seltzer, right? It's like everything except. And but I mean, and people dog it. I'll be honest, it's not going to be something that I'm going to have a lot of, but I like the seltzers. I do, especially if I'm outside. Like this is delicious, but
Yeah.
I would think if and I lived in Arizona for a long time, like I would feel like Ron Burgundy chugging milk. It's all hot out, and he's like, milk was a terrible choice, because this beer is good and it's refreshing, but it's not at the same time. And that's not a knock on the beer. To me, the crispness of the sour, especially the places, there are two kinds of places. There is a place that has a sour and bottles of Monin, and then there are places that have, or not sour, seltzer, and there are places that have flavored seltzers. Those are two different things, right? Obviously, those are two very different things. But having those seltzers, you're seeing a lot of places that are turning to wine, right? I was at Tilted Axis, Downey in Dearborn. I mean, all kinds of different places making wine. And obviously, living in Metro Detroit, mead is something that may be a little more abstract other places, but here, because of several different places, mead is not that abstract, right? It's pretty common. And I mean, you can go, the Detroit vineyards, right? The old Stroh's ice cream factory, you can get wine. And so I think you're right that the one-offs, the variants are what keep people like me and my wife. Because if it was me and you, I don't care what you have on draft. Like, I will be hanging out all day, but to appease
Make
the
an
masses,
event out of it.
Yeah, that's right. But but a lot of people, they don't like the seltzers but I like all of it.
I don't have an issue with it. I think there's a time and a place for everything. It's not, the channel isn't ever going to turn into like, hey, thanks for watching Draft Therapy. Welcome, and this is the newest seltzer review. Yeah, or cider or whatever. It's not going to do that, because that's not like where my interest lies. But I'm interested in trying anything. I love to try. When Smooch came out, well, I had like when it initially started getting kind of popular, and I was seeing it on Reddit, and I was seeing it on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, but I was on a break from drinking really anything, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, we'll wait. and then they release it, into the wild, and it kind of goes nuts. But with that, you kind of mentioned earlier, let's take the beer out of beer, and this is what we get. With that, Holmes has Deepest Depths, which is a series of like a, super fruity New England style IPA. That's exactly what they did. They took the beer part out and it's a seltzer, so you get that smoothie seltzer on the Troubadour Smooge side, which I don't even know if anybody knows that they're called Troubadour at this point. Oh, Smooge, and it's everywhere, which is insane.
Smooge has become ubiquitous. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't understand how it just sits out on the shelf. It's not refrigerated. Half the places you go to, there's like stacks of it, as tall as you are. And it's like, holy crap. Like, I thought I was supposed to refrigerate this.
Dude, I see that. And then all that sugar, like.
And then you got Deepest Depths from Holmes themselves. And it's like the base, the same base, but they're just different. They just took the beer stuff out of beer.
Right.
So,
right. And again, that kind of stuff, it shows not only, I talk about doing things for the sake of keeping other customers. That's part of it. But I love the spirit, the inventiveness, the desire to continue to push the boundaries. And then you see places like Griffin Claw that start to do distilling, and then it really starts to let you play with what do you do with this barrel. In fact, I was at Copper Hop this week. They had an IPA in a gin barrel. And it was like, damn, like I never would have thought of that. And it's just, that ability to vacillate between different styles and different textures. And I just, it's so much fun and you mentioned like Faison, places that have like solid structure. That's great because you know what you're going to get, and they're able to push their boundaries themselves. But to me, the lack of structure again is what makes this so much fun. You just how the moment strikes you. And, maybe I mentioned before with Jeff at Loaded Dice, it's a carrot sour, like, hell yeah, let's go.
One of the more interesting IPA, I think it was an IPA, was from Grand Armory, and it's called, it's not called Gin and Juice, but it's like some kind of Snoop Dogg, like, play on a Snoop Dogg song. And it's an IPA aged in gin barrels. And it's like, oh, this is real. Like you would think like, oh, maybe, I don't know, it could be kind of hit or miss, but it actually turned out pretty good. And I don't know if they've ever done it again.
That juniper, depending on the kind of gin. And I'm a super sucker for gin. Is like, I'm secretly like a really old lady. Like gin is like my all-time favorite thing.
You share it with your bridge group?
Well, funny story. I may be the youngest person in Michigan that knows how to play bridge. So
yeah, I have no idea.
I
don't even play euchre, so
I mean, I haven't played. Well, again, we're not allowed personal contact, so I don't. But
don't touch my cards.
That's right. My grandmother was a big card player, so I had to learn how to play bridge when she was not with her elderly lady friends.
You were the partner, or no? Yes. Well, you can't play bridge with just two people, right? It's a 4-person game.
No, you have to have 4 people.
Yeah.
Right, north, south, east, and west. Anyway.
Somebody said, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, somebody in the comments, EP again, Pabst hard coffee. I will say I've not had that.
I've had it.
And?
I prefer the cold brew. The hard cold brew.
But like, when do you drink that? Like, what's the...
I don't ever drink it, but I drink it for views.
Well, no, but I mean...
But yeah, like a regular... every day.
Like I wouldn't want that right now.
No, I mean it has caffeine. It's coffee on some level. So
is that just like for like the concept of you can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning? Like
I think it's like a pregame kind of thing. But it must sell. I mean, there's a market for it. I don't know who the market is, but there's definitely a market for it.
People out ice fishing.
Yeah.
Hunting.
Sure. They put it in orange koozies.
Yes, just in case.
I was going to ask you something.
I totally screwed it up.
No, that's all right. I remembered it. I'm only 2 beers in. So John had asked me, this is an ongoing thing that I like to, well, I'm going to make it an ongoing thing. I've only probably asked one other person this question.
Well, if you ask me, then it is ongoing. It's 2.
Yeah, it will be. And you can't steal this because I know you interview other people. So this is a John and me thing.
All right, I promise.
This isn't a John and Zach
Hold
thing.
hold on, let me.
Don't record this. No. You can't do that. You can't do it.
All right. I'm kidding.
All right. So what is your go-to karaoke song?
Oh man. What a great question. I
got to give credit to John Farner at soundbeer.com. He's the one that came up with the question.
John Farner for the win, as always. Oh, man. You know, I haven't karaoke'd in a long time, but it might be Friends in Low Places by Garth Brooks. You get a lot of participation crowd-wise that way. And I will say, as a younger person, not as much now, I mentioned before, Romeo. When I was in middle school, this dude with super long hair and no shirt on started selling all these records named Kid Rock, and he went to Romeo too. And so for a long time, I was really into Kid Rock. So, you know, maybe it would have been Bow to Bow or something like that back in the day. But now, if it was now, it would definitely be Friends in Low Places by Garth Brooks. I mean, and that's a very like scripted type answer, not off the wall. Or I will say, I remember hanging out at the bowling alley here in Romeo. There was karaoke every Thursday and dollar beers. It was heaven. And this guy every week would do Respect Walk from Pantera, and he would scream the whole thing, and it was awesome. And you wouldn't like anticipate it and wait for it, but like as soon as you saw him start walking, you're like, oh shit, here it is. And it was awesome. But I can't Dimebag Daryl. I don't have the it's a good one. That's a great question, John.
It's all John's. He said that last time the question was asked about, and I don't remember what the answer was. I know who the question was questioned.
How does it backfire? Did somebody start singing and it was terrible?
No, I think they may have asked me what mine was, or I can only assume. That was like 5 zillion beers ago. And you know, as somebody that, and like I said, I won't steal it, even though it seems like you have stolen it.
No. From John.
This was a joint. No, this is a joint.
Oh, it was a together
venture.
thing. Okay.
Yeah, we were covering something together.
Fair. I love questions like that right off the bat, because a lot of times, especially in a situation like this, not you and I, but when I go into a craft beer conversation or anything, really, people have this thought in their head. And then you ask them that question and it scrambles everything. And the goal is not to confuse the person across from you, but you want to get them off the default.
Right.
So
or
I think
if somebody's nervous, you just break the ice, you know, like, hey, this is just beer.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fantastic question. That's excellent.
John says it was death stares.
How did it backfire? I'm still confused.
I think it was just like an extended, like if a pregnant pause could just never be birthed, you know, like it was a forever. Whoops.
Somebody said best last call drinking song. That's a hell of a question too. I mean,
oh yeah. Randy says Night Moves.
Oh,
that's his karaoke song.
I have a really good friend.
I'm a little bit more.
That's a good one.
More partial to Main Street.
Down on Main Street.
You know, that's about Ann Arbor.
Yeah. I mean, Detroit Rock City, baby. So many good choices. One time, my dad and I were having this conversation, and my dad's not like super. Oh, somebody. How do
we don't have to get into it. We don't have to get into it.
I want a sidebar at some point. I don't know how somebody can take that question too seriously.
I don't know if that video ever aired or that piece of it.
So we'll never know.
Yeah, I mean, I have a archive of everything. The beers that like I didn't put videos out for, I have stored somewhere.
now I know this is not the forum, but now I have a question.
Sure.
What sends a video to the cutting floor?
To development hell. It's usually so my
We've all been
philosophy
there.
is, what's that?
We've all been there.
I don't like to be negative, about stuff. So there have been times where something's just not good and I just won't, like, I like to be critical. I like to say, like, this is what I liked about it. This is what I didn't like about it. This is what I would improve or I'd like to see more of, especially stuff where it says, it has this flavor and this flavor and this flavor, and it sells the world to you, but then you try it and it's not, it's nowhere near that. So it could be something like that where it's just like, it didn't work out. Their technical stuff has happened on my end. Like the audio was bad. Stuff just didn't turn out, it didn't work out the way that I had hoped it would. But if there's something like, I'm really to the point at this point where it's like, if it was, I try not to get caught up in hype anymore. So if something got hyped to a point where it just didn't live up to that hype, I'll just say, hey, sorry, I expected it to be this. I try to go in with like as low of expectations as possible. But yeah. So there have been a few that have just kind of fallen off, but that question, I think it got recorded, but it may have just gotten cut out. Like it was just kind of like, that's a weird question. Why would you ask me that? Something a little bit maybe too serious.
I got you.
Why so serious?
Yeah.
All right, we ready for the next one?
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping. Is it my turn? I'm kind of hoping
it is your turn.
I'm kind of hoping I pick out that sour because I think everything else we have in here is an IPA.
But we got to get to Mothfire too, so.
Oh yeah, you're right. All right.
That wasn't mentioned in anything, I don't think, unless you mentioned it post wise. Let me, while we're kind of skirting that subject, how social media. Whoa, social media. Like how much of what you do you feel is really just kind of social media and keeping up with, I got to post on, X service, I got to post on Y service, we got to, it's been a day, let's talk to, let's post a picture of this, let's mention this. Like how much involvement do you feel like is social media at this point?
I mean, for me, it's a lot. And maybe that's
hey, I'm known for like 6 inches of head. Don't take that the wrong way. Not a double entendre.
Hey.
Hey-o.
So, and I kind of straddle the generations where, when I was a kid, like I tell people, I learned, we had a typing class in 6th grade and it was literally on a typewriter. Mm-hmm. Which now is like, but what's
a typewriter?
Exactly. But I tend to gravitate towards the younger people when it comes to social media. Those that follow along with me, you see, I love the TikTok. I have so much fun with those little videos, and my attention span is not longer than a minute, so it works out nicely for me. I can cram it all in, and I do beer reviews that way. I do. I don't know what you call them. Brewery. They're not reviews, but the tours, conversations, whatever. You can call it what you will. But I think when it comes to craft beer, the Twitter game is, it's not at the level of politics or sports where it's just like gobbed. The craft beer community lives far more in Instagram and Facebook because it's visual, and not that Twitter doesn't have the ability to be visual, but for whatever reason, obviously Instagram is visual, and I think Facebook, to be honest, if I had to, and I don't want to offend anybody, but the craft beer crowd skews a little older, and so does Facebook, and so I think when it comes to things like Twitter and TikTok, I'm not saying people don't use them. I mean, we've been talking about John Farner. I mean, I would don't let her hear me, but I'd slap my mom for 30,000 Twitter followers. So, you know, I mean, that's not nothing. So, I don't want to get slapped myself now. I got to keep looking over my shoulder. No, I'm kidding.
Where is she?
I was down the block. Unfortunately, I might have been too loud. So, you know, so it's not that it doesn't exist, but I feel like the things that I do when it comes to craft beer, I get the most interaction on Instagram and Facebook. And part of that is because people like John Farner have created these communities, or Steve Johnson, where we can share these things amongst each other, or Sean, even you in this moment right here. You know, that's what's great about this is we can hang out with all of these folks here and have these conversations. And, you know, I talked earlier about the community, but I think the thing about social media, especially right now, you know, we've talked a couple different times. The beer festival keeps coming back up, and like, I mean, how much do we miss those right now?
Yeah.
And so I'll tell you what, I've not been to a beer festival since I started doing this project, and I can't wait to be able to do that again. By the way,
until that's a thing again.
I did.
You
called
didn't
it.
tell me?
I did. No, I did. But you'd asked me a question. I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, well, that was polite.
Now my mom won't hit me again.
Well, you never know. This is Shade Lake by Mothfire.
It's the West Coast.
I was going to say West Coast.
Very.
You got to give me a sniff.
There's websites for that, you know.
Really? I'm on the wrong websites.
So I'll tell you, and I mentioned it before, living in Arizona, Arizona's not on the coast, obviously, but the flavor from Arizona is this hybrid of California, the Pacific Northwest, and Colorado. It's a proximity thing, but one of the main styles when I lived in Arizona for all those years was the West Coast IPA, and I've seen over the last 6 months or so, I've seen a lot more West Coast IPAs, and I approve. This smells fantastic. Because what you
how would you describe what you're smelling?
Bitter, earthy. It's going to be far less hazy, and that's the thing. And by the way, we're talking about connecting people. Also, shout out to
Better on Draft.
And so you were talking earlier about how
change glasses here.
Oh, see, look at you, kid. They keep getting cooler. Why am I so square?
I mean, we could use a KBS glass if you wanted.
Oh, but see,
I mean, I don't want to. I mean, we could use a Grogu and Sith Grogu glass.
You're just shaming me into the ground here. But I mean, so you know, I know that the hazy New England, and I love the hazy New England. I don't care if it's a bloated trend or not. I don't care. They're delicious. But earlier you talked about liking the bite, the edge. The West Coast IPA will always have that bite that you're looking for, right? And to me, that's my favorite part, is that you do get, it's more harsh. And I like that. It's like, you know, it's like when you're drinking whiskey. If you don't like the burn,
yeah,
you know. So
why are you drinking this?
And so to me, this would be, I feel like a goober, just anyway, but because I the things that I tend to like, especially right now, are the New Englands, and so I feel like I'm just like falling into this. It's like driving in the snow. You just fall into the tracks of the person in front of you. But I've seen more West Coast IPAs lately, and approved.
Yeah, I know. I don't know about you, and I've mentioned this several times, you know, in my videos, but my craft beer journey started.
That's bizarre.
This one is?
Yes, I'm listening.
My craft beer journey started with more of like, you know, Anchor Steam.
Yeah.
You know, Sierra Nevada, Pale Ale, stuff like that. So
OG.
Yeah, like, I mean, and I was after, you know, obviously not on the cutting edge by any means, but it was like, oh, okay, I've tried this beer, and that's cool. And then I had a friend that introduced me to stuff that was more, California based. And I was chasing like let's get the most bitter. Let's get the most bitter. Is this bitter? That's not bitter enough. Let's try this one. Is this bitter? And it just got to be like an arms race of who could be the most bitter. So that kind of like, at that point, it was kind of like, let's try the browns. Let's try. It's because you would just get so much. It's not that it was too much. It was just that there was so much of that because West Coast IPAs were so huge at the time. And now it's kind of like, there's definitely a market for West Coast IPAs, and there's definitely lovers of West Coast IPAs. But
is that what's going to happen with the hazies, with the New Englands? I mean, are you and I going to be sitting here 3 years
maybe
from now
in a year?
Like, I can't drink no more hazies, and like right now I'm like into my vein, just like inject them. But I, that's the thing. It's like your favorite song. Back when people listen to the radio, he says as he gets fired because he works on the radio now. But
the radio overlords.
But they're always watching. So, but corporate
listening
America.
At least.
Well, of course. Well, no, they never listen. That's actually the kicker.
That's the ironic part.
That's right. But when radio music, right? Like that song over and over, and you're like, this song is great. This song is great. This song is great. And then one day you're like, holy shit, this song is terrible. And then you can never listen to it ever again. And so I wonder, I do think about that with the New Englands. Where do we go? Or I saw it in the thread earlier about lactose, which I like the lactose. It's just like anything else. When I can't drink black coffee. Oh, loser. And because I like milk. And so I know. I can't drink black coffee.
I drink.
I grew up in a house where we didn't have cream or sugar, and both my parents are like,
they didn't make it at your house.
Well, no, it was
you bring a grocery bag. The bottom would fall out of it, and the cream and the sugar would fall out.
It was 7 cups of coffee and 1 cup of water in the machine. You had to sludge through it to. But I love the lactose and the mouthfeel. But I wonder with so much of that, if it will become something that people are
they just get over.
Yeah.
Got to get over if you want to get under. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought with having all these New England style IPAs, I mean, to be perfectly frank, you try so many of them, and that's what's like flooding the market. After a while, you just kind of think, man, I'd like to get, I'd like to see, and I'm a simple man. I like simple things. I like, just give me a really good brown ale. Like I've talked to people and I say, when you go to a brewery, like they might be, and I love trying places that are known for IPAs, and you go to their brewery and they have something that's not an IPA, like it's a dark beer, a stout or just anything that's not the IPA.
Motor City Brewing worked. It's an English ghetto
blaster. Yeah. Like just like to try something that's kind of out of the ordinary for them, regardless of what the prevailing style is at the time. I mean, but it almost gets to the point where you're like, New England. And there was, for me, I had somebody in my comments that was like, hey, you've been talking about stouts too much. Talk about IPAs or maybe a lager. And this was in January. So I did a whole series, like every day I did Costco did a German advent calendar. And I every day I did a beer on whatever the beer of the day was. And the funny thing is a person said, hey, do an IPA or maybe just like a lager. And it's like, I just did like 22 lagers.
Yeah, like what?
They were.
I
don't know watching? What the total was. They were like 18 out of 24 lagers. 18 of the 24 days were lagers, and I was just like, oh my god, I'm like, I don't need to drink a lager for another like month or two.
No mas.
Oh yeah, but I just thought that was kind of funny.
Somebody in the comments, and I actually, and maybe this is
like bready almost.
I told you it has this. The aftertaste just kind of it caught me off guard.
This is floral too.
But not in the same way. But not
not at all like the Ascension one.
So it's like the Ascension one tasted like you were smelling flowers. This one tastes like you're chewing flowers.
Yeah. It's grassy. It's like bready almost, like a white bread kind of like I don't know if you were
Not at all what
ever
I
anybody
expected.
here watching this was ever a poor college student and had like bread that sat in their closet for like wait and it started to ferment. That's kind of like, I mean, it's not bad
No, it was still
because
good.
it's not as bitter as I thought expected it to be
I,
for a West Coast.
it does not taste at all like I thought it would. I feel the West Coast, but again, that like reverse floral
Yeah.
bitterness is I yeah. It, somebody said in the comments, I can't really differentiate between New England's anymore, and it's like, boy, it's hard to argue with that, you know.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is that you're going to find high quality beers almost anywhere you go. The market will not allow for bad beer making. You may get away with it once or twice, but if it happens the third time, people will just go to the next place down the block. But at the same time, like I also think the flavors are so overpowering. There's only so much you can do. I mean, how many different ways can you spin a New England? There's not
Yeah,
many
and
ways to counteract the power of the haze.
yeah, and I think that you start to get to where it's like, you know, you start to get like, oh, I really like this one, and I maybe don't like this one as much. So you start to kind of lean towards the style. You know, there's all these different striations in that style set, you know, and it's like, okay, well, I'm leaning more towards the tropical kind of flavored ones, and then you start to, as overpowered as you might feel with it, you start to kind of lean towards, oh, you start going down the path, you know, like I like this tropical style. Oh, I like the stone fruit style. Okay, I like this, you know, I like the stone fruit style that has a little bit of bitterness to it, or I start to like the tropical style that, or I like the mango style that, you know, so you start to branch off into these really specific
Great point.
branches of the same tree, you know, and it's like it gets really difficult to differentiate, and then you start tasting like beers that you've had before, but these tiny, you know, offset differences that you didn't get from that one that you really liked. You know, you start to get these little maybe flowers, you know, off of that one branch.
And this is what I love about getting into things like this. It reminds me as a kid going to Old Tiger Stadium with my dad, and watching baseball is one thing, but then keeping score is another. And the conversation that you and I are talking about is more like keeping score than it is just watching the game, right? Because now we're talking about being able to find those different veins, those little things that make these different, and that participation within the within the styles themselves, to me, is what makes it so much fun. And again, I do believe that there is a there's only so far you can go with those New Englands, but I think you're right that if you do pay attention, that, you know, maybe my comment was a little on the surface, that you can find those. I think that word striations was perfect, that there are those little differentiations in there. This
And
one's
it's
just
like,
weird, but I like it.
yeah, it's not, if I read this, the funny thing is, if I went to you know, we met up. Oh, just to mention, this is Centennial Columbus and Summit Hops, which I don't know if we said. But, you know, when we went and picked this up, Zach and I we met at 8 Degrees Plato yesterday and decided like, oh, hey, they had Mothfire and picked this up. You know, if you saw this and you saw, it says Lush West Coast IPA, you might be pretty disappointed thinking you're going to get like a Sierra Nevada, like a, you know, a traditional West Coast
Well,
IPA.
and that's why I said what I said. I was so surprised, because when I think of especially the word luscious, it does not. This to me is not that at all, and that's not a bad thing. I just,
Right.
if I was gonna describe this beer, luscious is probably the last word that I would use, because it's harsh, and I'm okay with the harshness. I like the bitter, because to me, luscious is, again, a more smooth mouthfeel, something a little more gentle, and this is whack your taste buds a little bit.
I don't know if I necessarily even would say it's harsh, but it's not. It's totally like off kilter from what you would expect when you see West Coast. You think like we're in an arms race, like we got to get the most bitter thing, or it's got to be super piney or resinous or zesty, like orange peel or lemon or grapefruit.
Right.
It would be like a perfect kind of description. I would just like, oh, it's gonna be like my mouth is gonna. I'm gonna look like I don't know. I'm thinking like somebody out of Beetlejuice or something, where their face is just all like a shrunken head, just with their
Oh
mouth just
no, dude! What was
sewn
the?
shut.
Was it Natty Light, the bitter beer face?
Oh
One of those
yeah, the
commercials back in the
Keystone.
day? Keystone Light, bitter beer
Yeah,
face. There was that old guy, and he had like
yeah, with no teeth and yeah.
and even on the nose, because I know we got to smell it, and like it doesn't.
What are you trying to say? I feel like you're implying something. You have to smell it.
I know, and now that I am, even that leads me away from it being a West Coast. I don't even get the same. I'm not saying it's not a West Coast, because I mean, if it's just on the visual, like I mean,
yeah, it's not hazy at all.
No, and it's got that light copper, like it's right on the money, and I like it. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not digging on it. Like I'm not digging against it. Maybe digging's the wrong word, because I like to use digging as, and I'm liking it. I am digging it because it's different. I just don't know if I'd label it as a West Coast.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But what would you call it? I think that's because the other one, I had the
Semantics.
Lolo. I cheated on you. I had the Lolo yesterday. And that one, it's like super hazy, delicious. But you're right. This one, and one of the things I liked about Mouthfire, though, is the artistic interpretation. I don't know. I'm drawn to the aesthetics. You and I had talked about that ahead of time. Like, we need a couple more, and I was like, let's see if we can find that Mouthfire.
Yeah, we kind of touched on this really. We didn't touch on it in this video, but when we talked. So I don't know if people watching this are aware, but Mouthfire is in Ann Arbor. They're like, I think they're on Industrial, South Industrial, or one of the industrial drives. This used to be pileated, or the location that they're in used to be pileated, which again, most people watching this might not be familiar with pileated, but they've been around for a couple of years, and they were distributed almost primarily in Ann Arbor. Plum markets and
and the same is true to a certain extent with that one.
Right.
Though I did see it's funny because I didn't see it at Holiday Market when you and I went to 8 Degrees Pedal yesterday, but I saw that Holiday got a big shipment of it today. And you can find it in Royal Oak.
Yeah, the story behind that, like how it would go from being pileated to Mouthfire, like that's another interesting kind of thing you see. We talked earlier about breweries that went under or breweries changing, and it's kind of like you kind of see, if you go to Pileated's website, I think now it just pushes to Mouthfire, but they seem like they're canning a lot more, and they're doing a lot more of like out of tap room pickup kind of stuff. And it's like, hey, come here, we're open 4 hours, 5 to 9, come and pick it up now.
That's the thing I noticed, because I was looking for it, and I would I have driven to Ann Arbor just to pick up those 8 beers? Probably not. But could I have made some time out of it? I've got some cousins in Ann Arbor, sure, whatever. But that we talked about that earlier, though, the concept of as a new or newer brewery, what is your base model? And is your base to have a banging tap room, or is it to be able to push beer out the door in delivery, distribution, what have you? And I feel like there's not a wrong answer, but I feel like if part of your answer, and we keep hitting on this, doesn't involve pushing cans out the door, because when do we get back to, chat box, when's the next beer festival? Which one is it? When is it is it this summer? I
don't think so.
I don't either. I was at Motor City Brewing Works. I was talking with Pat Scanlon, right? He's one of the godfathers of the the beer festivals here in Michigan, and he's like, we're doing all we can, and we'd love to have one later on in the summer, and I think that'd be great, but I just I don't see it, and to me, those kind of things, it's hard to imagine. I don't know.
I think we're looking at like the fall. It's when you said that, I kind of thought about it, and I'm almost conflicted. Like, I think that we'd be looking at fall, and I would say like the Eastern Market one, but that space is so small, and everybody is it's so tight. Like, just to use a porta potty, it's like a gauntlet. It's like, you got to go in there, and it's like the American Gladiators gauntlet. Like, you're just getting, people are hitting you with like pugil sticks and stuff. Yeah, you're just, I got to get out of here. I got to get to that bathroom.
A big tennis ball can.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Blaze comes out to wrestle you, and it's all over with. Yeah,
as long as it's not Malibu, I'm all right.
The best name.
So somebody, it's been kind of going in the chat a little bit.
2022.
22. Wow, that's.
Oh, sorry, that's what you were talking about. I'll just stop talking.
Oh, I don't know. Summer 2022. I would hope it'd be sooner, but that might be like when it's the safest. But someone else in chat, it's kind of been going through. What are your feelings on so we have New England style IPAs, right? We have West Coast style IPAs, and then we have this second and third. That would be third and fourth. We have hazy IPAs, and we have juicy IPAs. So in your mind, do juicy and hazy IPAs fall under that New England style IPA category, or do you feel like they're their own thing?
Yeah, because those usually come across as like subcategories. To me, I guess you could say like all New Englands are hazy, but not all hazies are New England. But if you have a hazy, I mean, I guess what differentiates a non-New England hazy IPA and a hazy IPA? To me, at that point, we're really splitting hairs. The juicy ones, yeah, to me, those are, I don't want to say they're all the same, because like you said earlier, and I thought it was super smart that the things cut just a little differently the more deeper you go. But to me, if we're talking about hazy and juicy, those are usually two words that I would use to describe a New England. Those are probably the first two words or the first two adjectives that I would use. But what do I know? I'm just the dude on the end using his pinky to pop the top. I do nothing as far as any of the rest of it goes. So, if somebody sat me down and said, all right, Zach, here's a New England and here's a hazy, but it's not a New England, and they explain it to me, I'd say, okay. But if it was just me, that's all. And I said it earlier, right? To me, it's hard to find huge differences between New England A and New England B. And so now if we're breaking them off into subcategories, it becomes even more difficult.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, myself included, feel a little bit, I don't know, betrayed, maybe too strong of a word, but
how dare you?
I just feel it's a little bit disingenuous to say I have a juicy IPA or I have a hazy IPA, and it is as clear as, like as clear as this, or clearer, because this actually does have a little bit of particulate, but it's a juicy / hazy IPA, and it's as clear as a filtered IPA, and it's not juicy, and it's obviously hazy is a visual, aspect. Right. I don't think hazy is like a textural or a tasting sense word. So
you can conflate the two, but I don't think they're the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think you can see, I think we talk about the senses being connected. Sometimes I think if you see one, where are we going? If you see one thing, your mind may feel another. So if you see something, it may influence, even if slightly, the way you taste.
I think it's all, it is, at the end of the day, it's all nitpicky, but it's, I don't know, I feel like it's a marketing kind of buzz word.
all
buzz
those are
thing to be
buzzwords.
like, oh yeah,
Hazy and
well
juicy,
everything New England style IPA.
right? I mean, Sam Adams has a New England now. I saw the commercial the other day.
Well, they've had one for a while.
But they keep showing the one commercial. I thought it was new. I don't know.
Oh yeah, no, they do have a new one, but they had like a Sam Adams New England from a couple of years, like when everything started really like exploding between all the different, states or whatnot. It's confusing. There's like East Coast IPA, there's New England style. All these things are IPAs, but the, I would I if I were for caveman lawyer,
Yes.
and you sat me down and gave me a New England style IPA, I don't know if I'd say, oh, this is an IPA, because the IPAs that I would be used to are something a little bit more akin to this.
Or a little more closer to like a hop slam, right? I mean, to me, that's like when I think of IPAs, like
Yeah.
it's a little more because I mean, today I think and that's a great point. Like, it depends on what year you say IPA. I think if you said IPA today, I think a lot of people would come back with juicy and hazy. But to me, the IPA is far more West Coast or hop slam than it is juicy or hazy. But that's an affect of the times.
You think at this point that if you said IPA, someone wouldn't say Two Hearted or Pliny or something like that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't. I mean,
it's the number 1 and 2 IPAs in the country.
By opinion or by volume?
I don't know. Whatever place they
but
get excited when they say that's the number one thing or whatever.
Look, nobody's going to question the caliber or quality or scarcity or value of Pliny the Elder. I'm not here to make a case New England style versus Pliny the Elder. But when I think
you have to die on this hill, tell me which one is it?
Well, if I have to die on the hill, then I'm dying on the New England hill because to me, if we're talking about things that look in this circle, no, but you in a blanket statement, when people say today, when people say IPA, I don't think Two Hearted to the general population. If we're talking about name recognition, fine, but from a style, I think it'd be far closer to the first two things we had than to what we're having right now. I mean, and look, and I'll say this with all due respect, especially when it comes to, we talked about Ascension. I mentioned most of their brewers are in their 20s. What are they turning out?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, then so that's part of what makes me think that. Yeah, totally. It's all copper brown and see through, and that's not a knock. Ascension makes my. I hate because I did sports talk radio for years. The Mount Rushmore concept is the laziest crutch in the history of sports talk. The Mount Rushmore of blank.
Yeah.
But to me, Ascension is of that caliber. But I think the way that they do things shows the way that the next wave is thinking. Though I do think, having done the craft beer podcast, one of the things that I have noticed is, there's been for a long time, it's like, how many different things can we jam into this beer? How many different flavors can we find? And it seems like the consumers are maybe not specifically, but they're conveying to the brewers that they'd like something a little more simple, because I've seen a lot more, and it's not my preference because I'm a lush, but I've seen a lot more table beers and sessionable things and things that have more crisp and clear flavors, as opposed to things that are bogged down and weighed in. And, by the way, M43, if we're picking IPAs, M43, and again, it's such a lame answer, but M43 is by far and away my favorite. Roll the can twice over and then
Hey, it can be lame, but it doesn't mean it's not true.
It's a good beer. I just
absolutely.
I wish I had a better answer, but like I think that I don't know who the fake Dr. Bigfoot is, but the real Dr. Bigfoot, I think, is correct in that, especially when you go out, if you go to any bar, you'd be hard pressed not to find an M43 or a variation of, right? Because I mean, but
Yeah.
whether it's Boss Tweed or we talked about Mango earlier, right?
Yeah, I
The Pride of Marshall, Michigan. Yeah, it's very good.
which one?
What isn't that where M40? Isn't that where
Williamston,
Williamston? Oh boy.
Marshall's Dark Horse, and
Oh, that's right.
Ogma at some
Oh,
point.
so bad at geography. Such a typical American.
Tell me where Spain is on a map.
The rain in Spain falls mostly
Mainly on the plain. But yeah, I think that, I think Zach here, not the Zach I'm talking to, but this Zach, M43, the gold standard for New England style.
This is
Two
solid.
Hearted's. Yeah.
Like
and I
this.
think that's the thing it's not recognized. I don't know how recognized it is outside of Midwest or Michigan.
Which one?
Two Hearted, obviously.
Oh yeah,
Two Hearted.
I mean, when I lived in Arizona,
A Midwest IPA.
You could find Two Hearted anywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right.
I think it's just a restriction of it, of M43 not being as broadly available or widely available in the country as something like Two Hearted.
Yeah, I mean, Bell's is anywhere, everywhere, all the time.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
I think, and I think M43 is kind of unique to Michigan, but I know that other states, when, it's kind of like when we got Toppling Goliath, when Pseudo Sue or when King Sue came here, it's something that you kind of like, you look forward to it. But I don't know if you've noticed this, but it seems like what do you think of craft beer, the whole kind of ideology of it? What do you think of the whole, I don't know, the opinion of like, it's really good, like everybody says how good it is until you can get it. Like when you can get it, when Pseudo Sue or King Sue comes here, it's like, yeah, it used to be better.
Well, but I think that is one of the things we talked about earlier when we were talking about the futures bet with loaded dice. It's like you want what you want when you can have it, but then as soon as flip that, you want what you can't have.
Get.
And so you
FOMO.
Right, exactly. And you put these things on a pedestal, things you've had once or twice, things you've seen other people talk about, and you're like, this has to be
the best.
It has to be. It has to be. Why else would
somebody else said it was good?
And not only somebody, but somebody's more than one person has said it. And so I think that you build up this concept, but then as soon as it becomes, that's the thing. Like, I think if you took Two Hearted to somebody outside of Michigan that had never had it before, they'd be like, oh my God.
This is really good. This
is amazing. And it is amazing, but you're not going to be fazed by it. How many times have you had it? It's the proximity, the ability to have it on a regular basis. So I think that's absolutely
the thrill of the hunt.
If you could get Pliny the Elder every day, would it be as good as it is now?
Yeah, I don't know. It
may taste the same, but would it be as good?
That's the antithesis of what I want. That's like, it's hard for me to picture that because it's like the antithesis of what I try to do. It's like I try to live in this no hype zone, and it's actually, I'm drawing it as a big picture, but it's actually like a little tiny picture. But it's it's like, it's minuscule.
Well, and that's just such a fascinating question because you talk about like the no hype zone, and I mean, craft beer is
the hype zone.
It is the hype zone, and I think that's okay. I totally understand from where you're coming that you want it to be stripped down. Like the can matters, but not as much as what's on the inside. Or
right, exactly.
But I think that's true, and I think that the can will only get you so far, and at the same time, that's one of the reasons that I love doing what I'm able to do, is that I do think that my beer tastes better, and if it was food too, because I've done this in the past as well, if I know who's making my food, if I know who's making my beer, it tastes better. You understand the process, the thought behind it, and you feel that connection to it. And so I think when things are more accessible, you don't put that same value on them. And so I think that's absolutely correct.
You taste that reputation.
That's absolutely right. And the label, it's such a bad example, but I say this when confronted with these kind of things. The movie's Superbad, right? Super hilarious. But for whatever reason, I didn't see it for, I don't know, 6 or 7 months after it came out. And then people were like, oh my God, this is the best movie ever. The best movie ever. And I saw it. I'm like, this is funny, but it's not nearly as good as all of you told me that it was going to be. And so now I hate it.
Yeah. You hear so much about it that you have to be like the polar opposite of what it is.
Without even trying to be. And the real Dr. Bigfoot, again, as opposed to the fake Dr. Bigfoot, brings up a good point is we like the hype. It's the excitement. Nobody stands in line for nothing.
I like to go to the Apple store like weeks before the new phones announced, and I stand in front of it.
Like a tent.
And there's never anybody in there because it's the Apple store. Nobody gives a crap about Apple, right? So I just stand there. And I like the line to form behind me, and they're like, what are you waiting for? I'm like, yeah, I'm waiting for the new iPhone.
I go to the one at Somerset and sit in the Tesla next door.
It's been a while since I've been there. I didn't realize that the Tesla was next door.
Until they throw me out. I think it is next door, but I
might as well be.
But yeah, but and look, it's not wrong when it comes to the hype, because it's like anything else when it comes to any kind of hobbyist or collector. If it wasn't exciting, if it wasn't fun, if it wasn't anticipated, why would we care? What would be the difference? And so it's not about being anti-hype, but you can't let the hype let you know how it tastes. That's got to be up to you. That's and I think that's what you were talking about, and I totally agree.
We have the other Zach that says limited releases direct from breweries are banking on beer FOMO. Absolutely. Not saying that it's not warranted, that the hype behind certain beers aren't warranted, but the funny thing is there is follows up. My beer closet is full of cases of beer FOMO.
I love that. Comment of the night.
I feel it.
Comment of the night.
Yeah, I think that's everybody that's currently watching this or that will watch this in the future can attest to beer FOMO. Yeah. I mean, how many times do you I was just about to say this before he typed that. It's like, we talked about Michigan beer. There's so many good choices, and there's so many good choices from places you may have never heard of, that it's like, oh, I missed out on this one. And that's something I really had to train myself to kind of be okay with missing some of these things. Like I had to train myself to say, yeah, you can't drink them all. You do not have money to buy them all. It's tough, like, oh, this one's going to be the best. And I think you kind of touched on it earlier. It's always something that, you can't get, or something that's like you've had one time or two times. It's like 2 times. It's, you consider it the best, one of the best, of this style that you've ever had. And for me, I know one of the earlier viewers, Cam, I don't think he's on anymore, but, when I went to Florida, one of the best Russian Imperial stouts I had ever had is Cigar City's Marshall Zhukov. Yeah. And Zhukov is like, I've only had it once. I had a bomber, I split it with a friend, and it was like, this is like one of the best Russian Imperial stouts I've had. And it wasn't like the, special edition or, XYZ version. It was like, no, this is like the straight up regular one that in Florida you can get, it's probably it's a shelf turd.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. The FOMO or the scarcity doesn't make it taste good. We were talking about, and I know I keep circling back, but keeps popping up, the Future Bets and Jeff Smith, is that those are sold out, right? And yeah. Theoretically, somebody, let's say I had 2 shares, I could sell those to you for double what I paid for them if you were really interested.
How much did you pay for them?
I have no idea. I actually have none. Well, because when I went, they were already sold out.
I've looked.
I had
They're
missed.
sold
No,
out.
but again, the concept being that I could sell these to you, but the beer we don't know. It could
Yeah.
be terrible, but
Could
because we're
be.
talking about it, we're excited. Now, do I think it's going to be terrible? No, but
Right.
that's the hype. That's exactly what we're talking about.
All right. So you were done with your
Oh, yeah.
Mothfire. I just finished mine. So I think it's time for another beer.
Yeah, it is.
What do you think? All right, let me reach in here. I'm not going to look. I didn't look. I flipped. I promise I'm going to switch the angle here so you can see that I didn't look. I have a feeling I'm going to reach in. I'm going to grab that Ferndale one again.
I'm hoping for the sour at some point.
I didn't look, but I
feel like
wanted to.
I feel like you may have looked because you made that sound.
That's the way I.
Oh,
that's the way I roll. I'm gonna fall off this thing, but I know.
Oh.
So I know. Deductive reasoning. It's not the first one. All right, I didn't look. Look at that.
Yes.
You lucked out.
Hell yeah. We needed a palate cleanser. The
Back to the Tiku.
The last sour I had from Ascension was fantastic. Wow, there's a lot in this one.
A lot in this. Oh, like the label, or
no? I mean, plum, banana, cherry, maple syrup, and cinnamon.
Yeah, so let's go through this. This is Smoothie Sour Bowl from Ascension in Novi. Like you said, it's over fruited. It's not just fruited; it's over fruited smoothie sour with cherry, plum, banana, maple syrup, and cinnamon. Brewed and packaged by Ascension Brewing Company. This is 8%. This is not the lowest. The other Ascension one, I think, was the lowest one. Actually, I don't know what the Mothfire one was. 7%. Mothfire was the lowest. What's your opinion on label designs that don't tell you what the ABV is?
So, I mean, I think ultimately, if you're going for single beer, one sitting, it doesn't really matter. But I think overall, that's a no-no to me. I think it's important that, I think you got to know, right? I mean, you can usually tell, right? I mean, if you're having a porter or a stout, it's probably not going to be 5%. But at the same time, well, it could be. Probably not, though. But again, to me, I think, I mean, by law, doesn't it have to have it? I thought it had to have it.
Talk to when you end up going outside of Metro Detroit and you interview Joe Short, ask him why he doesn't put ABV on any of his labels. It's like the insanity builder for anybody that reviews beer that wants to talk about the ABV.
Is that why he does it?
I have no idea. No, I'm sure it's not.
Oh, it'd be funny if it was, though. Look at this.
I smell a lot of banana on this.
Oh, it's all banana. By the way, I've switched to hockey now. Back when the Wings, could put it in the back of the net and stop one every once in a while.
Whoa. I was looking at your glass and I almost over poured mine.
Oh, yeah, sure. That was my fault.
That's what I'm going to say right now, at least. That's a really...
all I get's banana.
Yeah, that's all I got on the nose from the can.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, same. Maybe a little bit of a...
Holy.
Raspberry.
And that tastes like 95 things at one time. I was like, yeah, see? Yeah.
You get the banana, but you get the maple syrup.
And cinnamon.
You get the cinnamon, for sure. And cherry. Plum. I don't eat a lot of plums because I'm, fairly regular.
Thanks for sharing.
So, yeah, hey, it's because all this beer.
Sure.
Yeah, but that's a lot of flavors in there. That's really interesting. I don't know if I've had something that's been so many kind of like you're getting that sweetness, but it's the ABV, like the, it's what is it, 8%?
Yeah.
Really nicely masked. It's not something that you drink and you're like, oh, this is like boozy. There's no booziness at all. This is kind of we talked about seltzers and drinks for the non-beer drinker earlier. This would be like this is something I would pour and like take to my wife and be like, you got to try this.
Yeah.
Mas Agave is one of those, Smooge is another one, and this would be one that's like, you got to taste this. She would taste it and say it tastes like beer, but I would be like, oh, she's going to try this, and she would think this doesn't taste like beer at all, but she's going to call me out and say it tastes like beer.
Well, that's the thing.
That's the way it is.
When I say, like, when I tell my wife, I'm like, oh, it's, it tastes like grapefruit. So drinking, she'll be like, it does not. I'm like, well, it tastes like grapefruit juice. It tastes like grapefruits. But again, my wife is not of the. But with this one, it's funny. We're talking about plums. I did a TikTok yesterday. A Copper Hop has a plum brown sour, and that one was interesting. And this one with the plums, same thing. Plums they're sweet, but like in a tart sort of way. So you get this different flavor. What was that last
plum
comment?
Is like
which one? Right there. Yeah, right there. Yeah, no, I agree. There's just a lot. It wasn't a knock. I was surprised by how many different flavors I could taste at once.
It's got like some other thing going on there, and it might be just the syrup.
I think it is. There's like and that lingers.
Yeah, it's like a smack your tongue on the roof of your mouth kind of. What is that? But it's not a bad ill. It's like a it's an odd.
It stays
thing.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. This also, like the last one we had, was not what I was expecting. It's still sour, but I was expecting much more like heavy fruit. This one is
like a puckering sour.
Yeah, and this is not that. And I think a lot of that's because of the banana. Because banana's like, it's like a paste. It's like smooth. Like it any edge you have, banana will just round it out.
Yeah, it's the sandpaper.
Yes.
Of the edge.
Banana, the sandpaper of fruits.
That's what I always say.
It's true.
When I go to the store, they say bananas. I'm like, oh, the sandpaper.
I like how John Farner says the Wingstop 32 or 39 shots tonight. Correct.
Makes it sound good.
Nothing like
a good percentage.
Nothing like losing by. I would ask how many times the Wings scored, but who cares? Because you gave up 7. Did the Pistons win? Oh.
I'm gonna get. So I used to have a draft therapy tiku that I ended up breaking spectacularly. So just so everybody, all 10 of the people watching, I've got some new draft therapy tiku glasses coming in. So yeah,
swag it out.
Yeah, not gonna have to use all these other, slumming it with all these other breweries that are of higher renown than draft therapy is.
Pushing my own label now.
Right. Yeah.
Do you have the other Zach asks, is there a most exclusive or prized beer in your cellar? I have no cellar, so.
You don't have a cellar?
I mean, people are like, do you keep beers? I'm like, how does one do that when you are constantly putting them down your gullet? No, but I don't have. I think the one thing that I've been holding on to, because we're talking about Ascension, I have a Balrog the Unchuggable. It's like a 10% stout. But otherwise, like, if it's a good beer, I'm going to have a really hard time hanging on to it, like a kid on Christmas. Like, how long you like that package sit there before you got to rip it open? So, usually for me, the good stuff, like, it doesn't last. And plus, how long, I don't know, because I'm not a big stout guy, so I don't have, like, the fancy, I don't know.
You don't have the fancy glasses. You don't have the fancy stouts.
Again, I'm just some schlub with a microphone. It's a brutal existence.
I have like since we've gone to the era where breweries will sell you singles and a lot of stores, finding the store or stores that will sell you singles.
Mhm.
I have really cut down on my having way too many of a specific beer. I'm looking around because I have stuff from years ago that I still have. Like I have like a wire rack full of beer that I never got to, or stuff that I had duplicates of, or multiples, or like, a place that might say, we have a special release and we have, this is the allotment. You want the full allotment? Yes, I want the full allotment and I'll try it on my own, but it might not be something like that I want to put out a video. I have a lot of beer, but I'm actually in my cellar. So I don't know if I'd say specifically that I have a cellar full of beer or like what's in the cellar, but there's a lot of beer in here that I might not necessarily like keep on purpose, but it's just like a place that I can stack it up, like pile it up. And I happen to have a bunch of beer, but I also have, like, I was looking upstairs where I do all my like editing and stuff. And I was like, oh, I have 2 Mackinac KBS, and I have 2 vanilla black notes, and that's really nice that I have those. When am I going to have those? I don't know.
See, like, I don't have anything like that in my collection. Nothing that I have in my fridge is like, or cellar is like something that you couldn't find anywhere else. At least not at this moment. I don't know. But I mean, that's a fallacy. Like, I mean, what's a reasonable amount of time? I could buy an unlimited amount of beer. Sometimes it feels like.
I like to go and crack into the IPA that's like 4 years old and say, well, this must taste just like it tasted when they bought, like they canned
Why
it.
isn't this the same?
No, it should be. It is the same. I don't have any point of reference,
Well, and that's the thing. Like, and again, I'm kind of a doofus. Like, how long do you let these beers sit? I mean, do they get better?
Indefinitely.
Do they get worse? I don't have time for that because eventually I'll end up drinking them.
Well, I had a video that I put out. It was Mars, Bell's Mars. It was
Yes.
I don't know, 2 years or 3 years old. It tastes a little bit different. Believe it or not.
It's not the same?
No, it's actually not the same at all.
More Venus or Saturn or...
No, it tasted more like
God,
my basement.
Oh, God, I was going to say, if you don't
say a little bit musty.
Uranus?
No.
Somebody
I wouldn't know. I don't know. I couldn't answer that.
So, yeah, I have no... Now, my wife is big into champagne, so we have a couple, like, nice bottles of... But I'm told to stay away from those.
You have some nice bottles of 2017 Moet.
Yeah, that's right.
This is for a special occasion. Don't break open the Moet.
I remember I got scolded at our wedding because we had a bottle of Dom, and I didn't like it.
Just in general? Or an old one?
I don't know. It was like I don't think it was an old one. I don't know. But
it could have been a fresh one. You were just like, I'm not. Yeah, no.
My wife said I wasn't
lowbrow.
That's right.
No,
She's not wrong. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, sitting next to me, I could pull out a bottle of something probably very old and not something. I know when I do live streams, I'll tease like, oh yeah, let me break out the Trader Joe's, something from 2016.
Yes.
And I actually have it in my refrigerator, so I could do it, but it's got a cork, so it's got to be kind of classy. If it has a cork and a cage, it's got to be something that's worth it. But at least those are like made by a real brewery. It's not like by it's not like a black label from 1960 something.
Somebody in it was the other Zach again. Do I have a non-beer or brewing question? I got to say, I'm not allowed to steal it, but the karaoke one to me is by far and away one of the best questions I've ever heard. Because oftentimes I don't stray too far away from the subject when we're in these conversations. It's not that I wouldn't want to, and sometimes we do, but I don't feel like I have the cachet to walk in and just start having these random conversations. So I try to keep keep my thoughts on track, on task. And so, but I got to tell you, after I was asked that question about the karaoke, I think I've got to find one that is more like that. And because we talked about it earlier, that a lot of times the brewers or whoever I'm speaking with is apprehensive. Oh, what questions are you going to ask, or are they going to be hard questions, or and again, the answer always is no. They're not going to be difficult questions. You're the expert. You're the ones that can deliver the knowledge. But I do think that I need to find some kind of question like that, because I think it's a great icebreaker, and if not an icebreaker, like a palate cleanser, like a little mint gelato in between courses. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it's hard because for you do you're on the radio and you're doing your podcast, and you have, it's old hat for you, and same for me. Talking to people, like, as much anxiety or as much trepidation, like before we start, like, oh, I got to explain all XYZ, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, like, this is what you can expect, like, hey, I'm going to do. I think that's another big thing. We talked, like, way back, several, I don't know, an hour and a half ago. People expect that, when you approach a brewery or a brewer and you want to talk to them, it's going to be about the money, like, I'm going to charge you. No, it's not like that. I'm out to help you. Like, I'm out to get your message out. I'm here to help. Exactly. It's nice to kind of have a question like that, because then, they're nervous. You're nervous. It's just like,
Yes.
Let me ask you some goofy, like, silly question. And it doesn't have to be a serious question. Like my karaoke, like, what song would, it's Let It Go from Frozen. It's going to be some stupid thing. And
I got that one verbatim. I've got an almost 5-year-old, so I've got that one in my, yeah.
It's going to be You're Welcome from Moana, or,
but, and that's one of those things. Shout out to EP, by the way. Have a good night's rest. That when we have these conversations with the brewer, or again, whoever it may be, like, it's not about me being with WWJ or anything like that. I just, my goal always is to have the most normal conversation that you could have while two microphones are there. I understand that the microphones signify something different, and you can't have the most normal conversation, but I do feel like you can get really close, and that's always my goal, is just kind of a conversation you may stumble upon. I try to be as conversational with my questions, and to be honest, I'm a simple dude. My questions, for the most part, come from a genuine place of curiosity. These are things that I want to know, and certainly when I'm thinking about my questions, my dad, believe it or not, super smart lawyer, man. The apple does indeed fall very far from the tree. But one thing that my dad always said is, every good lawyer, or no good lawyer, I should say, would ever ask a question to which he does not already know the answer. And so, in keeping that same thought, what I like to do is, while most of my questions come from a place of curiosity, is I also like to think about things that accentuate or highlight the brewery. What question can I ask that will bring out the best in this brewery, in this person, in this interview. That's what you want. You want the best out of your subject. And for me, that just happens to be what's best for the brewery too. And that's what makes it so much fun for me, is that my goal is to unearth the best parts of these breweries, no matter where I am or what it is. And it's just so much fun.
Yeah, you're not going to ask, you don't want to get into something that's like, yeah, give me like a really boring, let's make this the most boring.
Or what was the worst hire you made? Or what was the hardest thing? Like, I don't need to know any of that stuff, right? I just want to sift out the good things and tell them to me. I mean, it's, and I'm always super appreciative of the nice things that are said about the podcast, but so little of it has to do anything with me. It's the subject and letting them shine, and me taking a back seat and letting that happen. That's the best part.
So Carlos kind of brought this up. He says he'll drink stouts all year long. Do you have a specific kind of style, getting off the interview portion, but is there a specific style that you like to drink at a specific time of year?
So, I mean, I think, I saw that John mentioned this earlier when I said about the New England and the hazies in the summer and just wait till the next beer fest. To me, I will drink a hot coffee when it's 110. I'll drink an iced coffee when it's 10. But I do think that the styles are tailored for a reason, right? Like when it's cold outside, I want something heavy. I want something thick. I want something warming. So would I drink a stout in June? Sure. Because we have air conditioning and it's the 21st century. So I would.
For now.
I
mean, it's the 21st century, but air conditioning.
You're fair. But I will enjoy a good beer is a good beer. To me, it doesn't matter what our lunar positioning is. If it's good, I'll drink it. But like, am I gonna go out on the boat and drink 10 stouts? Like, no. But could you drink them all year long? Yeah, I don't. Again, I don't think you have to be governed by gravitational lunar rotation to decide what beer you want. But I do think that the atmosphere outside dictates what you want to put in your body. I think that's true in the food we eat too.
You're not a barrel aged on the boat kind of guy.
Again, I don't want to end up like Will Ferrell in the phone booth. Milk was a bad choice. I've already got the beard. I don't want to end up with the rest of it. The bad man bunted Baxter. No, but again, I don't think that the calendar should dictate if you should make this beer right now. If you think you've got the right formula, knock it out. But if you're looking across a broad spectrum about when you should make a stout, the answer probably is not June. It doesn't mean you shouldn't. It's when you should. Should and should not are different.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I don't know how far along you are in your, looks like you're empty. All right.
I am now.
Last beer, last call.
Yep.
I know we have 2 left.
Yeah, but we hit all 3. That was what was most important.
That's true. Yeah. You picked the last one or did I? Well,
no, I picked the last one.
Yeah, Didn't that would be 3. All right, let me switch the...
No, you picked this one.
No, it is mine. It's my pick. Can't look, though.
No, you can't look.
All right. I don't know if you could hear that, but I flipped open the cooler. I have not fallen into the abyss.
We're just glad you haven't fallen.
It's tough. We're back.
You picked
Ferndale.
That one earlier. That one makes sense.
Solo Copper.
Because we put that one back earlier, remember?
Yes. Oh, I remember. They call me an elephant in this house because my memory is so good.
So it's a double.
This is a New England style double India Pale Ale. This is Solo Copper.
Single hop.
Double dry. Yep. All Michigan copper. hops. Ferndale Project. I don't know the ABV. I don't think they put that on here. I think we alluded to that earlier. Generally, these have had a canned on date, but I don't see it stamped on here, so I have to assume that it was recent.
This one looks similar to the first one that we had.
Oh, the My Precious?
Yes. That one had mango in it, but it looks, again, pineapple. This one's a lot more milky. Does it have lactose in it?
I'm not sure. Doesn't say it does.
Then it probably does not. It just has that great.
All right. I didn't get much of an aroma.
No, it's kind of flat smelling.
Yeah.
Not in carb, but just in. And again, like, it's odd, not in a bad way, but you see it's pale or murky, but look at the color. It's like egg.
Yeah, it's
usually more
again,
yellow.
It's like a khaki. Yeah.
But it's even more, this time it's like real khaki.
But yeah, it's like really, I don't know, it's not
I know when I opened the can, I saw the haze, but I was expecting something a little more
like more white.
Yeah.
It's almost
it's like a flavorless IPA.
You think so?
It just tastes like IPA.
It's got IPA flavor. Damn it.
I don't know.
I don't know if it's like residual from the last one, but I almost get almost like a maple. But it might be just residual from the sour bowl.
That last one was heavy on the maple. And they don't. I will say this: one of the things that I like about Ascension is the descriptive can. I give them props for that.
Yeah,
I put it all out there, and you don't have to do this, but like the questions that you and I are talking about right now, if this were an Ascension or similar, we'd know. And again, the aesthetic of this
pineapple.
Can is great.
This is pineapple all day. Like not sweet, but
pineapple's got that like hybrid somewhere in between sour and sweet, right? Like nobody puckers up eating a pineapple, but it's not the sweetest thing you've ever had either.
Well, it depends. Like if it's an old pineapple, it can be kind of fermenty, like like pokey kind of flavor.
I got to say, between this one from Ferndale and the other from Mothfire, like super different flavors, right? Like I didn't expect this one to taste this way, just like I didn't expect this one to taste the way that it did.
Yeah,
I think that's great. To me, that's exciting.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like why you try all these different beers. You know, you get like it's an IPA, but I mean, looking at that IPA on the other, they're like opposite. This is like not bitter. There's no bitterness in it. It's really smooth. You know, it's got a bit of a sweetness to it, but it's not. It doesn't have that bitter aftertaste. Like I drank this and there's not really much of an aftertaste. Maybe a bit of a like residual sweetness to it, but not.
It leaves quickly.
Yeah, it's not, it doesn't hang with you. It's not bitter. You know, it doesn't have that bitterness. It just kind of like sticks on the back of your tongue or even on the front for extended amount of time. It's kind of like you drink it, you know, it fades really quickly.
Yeah. And it's just it's a nice option. It's a nice segue. Because again, you know, a lot of the things from Ferndale are a little more aggressive, a little more experimental, and this is definitely experimental. Especially, again, I can't get over. It looks like eggnog. Like the color to
Yeah,
me is fascinating.
it's super thick.
It is thick, but it doesn't.
It
This is.
doesn't. The mouthfeel isn't thick.
I was gonna say this is gonna sound weird. It doesn't taste thick,
Yeah.
and at first I thought when I started to pour, I thought there's no way there's not lactose in this, but I don't think there is lactose in it. I could be wrong, but I don't
Yeah.
think so.
I don't know, but it doesn't have that. Like for me, there's certain elements of beer that for me, like lactose always has this artificial sweetness
Yeah, you can feel it.
flavor to it.
Yeah.
And this doesn't have that. It's not like that kind of biting artificial. It's like an artificial, I don't want to say artificial sweetness, but there's like and I know I just said that, but it's not. It has like there's a characteristic that is like almost a telltale sign of being lactose because it is, it is this specific avenue of bitterness, but it doesn't have that.
But I think that's the beauty, and this is true with food too, is approaching things and making them seem like one thing without actually being that thing. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. I think that's exactly right. That you're told to think one way, and you can still taste it, but it's just not there. And so to me, the color, I don't know. This beer is fascinating. I'm very surprised.
Yeah, it's just
but again,
interesting because
I'm an ignoramus.
You and me both. It's interesting because it's not. This is like another beer that if someone wasn't really into craft beer, I would like say, try this beer. Again, my wife would probably say, oh, it tastes like beer. But, she can't tell between like a Leinenkugel Berry Weiss or a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale or a,
right.
Founders KBS. She wouldn't be able to tell you the difference between the three of those things.
But I think if you were somebody that was a little more in the middle of that thought process, that this one absolutely, like if you thought an IPA was too bitter or a stout was too heavy, like I would say, well, what about this? And it is heavy, it's thick, right? But to me, once it's in your mouth, it doesn't feel as heavy as it looks. It doesn't consume as heavy as it feels. And so I think you're absolutely right that this would be, when I was a kid, I grew up in the mid-90s, so like Dare was a thing. This would be like a great gateway drug. Like, absolutely. Just so my Dare officer knows I was listening. Just maybe kind of in the reverse, but yeah, I mean, to me, this would be a great entry beer. Well, but I'm serious because I think that's, and it's not as much of a challenge as it used to be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, like the approaching the convert. How do we get the person that only drinks Miller Lite, Bud Light? And obviously that's still a thing, but I feel like breweries are less concerned these days with approaching the heathen as opposed to the more average consumer. But to me, this beer is fantastic, and I'm glad you said that because it cuts both ways. Like, and again, I'm not an expert, but I'm also not a novice. This beer is delicious. I love the way it tastes, I love the way it feels. But if I was opposed to something overly bitter or harsh, or even if I didn't want something that was super high in ABV, this one's up there. But if you're under 10, so I think you're absolutely right. As far as like gateway goes or approach, spot on.
So what is the limit as far as you're concerned on ABV to like high ABV or, low ABV?
I think when anything over 10, I mean, my radar's up at 9. When you start getting to 10 and 11, it's like, could I drink a pint of that? Sure. But should I have maybe only 8 ounces of that? Yeah. And, you find, especially in the winter, a little more heavy. As far as in the low end goes, I'm fine with, it'll never be my choice, but I'm fine with a table beer, something like 3.5, 4. But I've said it before. I'm a sucker for the standard IPA, so I'm happy at 6, 7, 8 usually. But when you start getting into the barrel age programs and higher, it's not a bad thing because I'm okay with. I shouldn't say okay. I'm a big fan of the spirit world as well. But if I'm drinking a beer, I don't know if I want a shot of bourbon at the same time. And so when you start to peak on those higher ABVs, that more liquor type finish, to me it's not off-putting, but it's not preferable. Because if I want it to taste like gin or bourbon straight up, I'm not saying you can't fold it in, but once you start to push into those higher 11, 12, 13, just give me the shot.
Right.
So
yeah, just go for the real thing at that point.
Right. And I'm open. I got this from my dad. I'll drink anything, for better or worse. But preferably it's something between 6, 6.5, and 8, just for general consumption.
Yeah, 10%. That's kind of surprising that you go that hot. I mean,
I don't.
No judgment.
No, but how often do I find that? Again, we're talking about something a little more infrequent. I mean, on a regular basis, again, I'm between 6 and 7. I think everything we've had tonight's been within that margin. But again, I go to a lot of different breweries, and they always ask me, "What do you want?" And and I always give the most jackass response, but it's, "What do you want to give me?" And so, because I want to know what they're proud of, I want to know what they enjoy, right? Because what do I know? I'm not the expert in this brew house; they are, and so oftentimes it's the things they're proud of are the things that push the boundary. And so I'll end up finding things that are 8, 9, 10, 11. It's not something, it's not a frequent, but to me, that's where I start to like.
Yeah, it's like, what would you like? It's like, well, what's like the best example of what you do?
Right.
Oh, it's a 20%. Like, oh shit.
Fuck.
I guess.
Sorry. But yeah.
I guess I'm drinking this 20% beer.
Okay.
Right. I gotta drive home today at some point.
Until I get sponsored by Uber.
Yeah.
But to me, that I'm glad that we got to this point, because that's something that's really important to me. And sometimes it feels like a cop out, but I always want to know what they want to pour. That's always something that's been important to me. Is because they always ask, "What do you want?" I'm like, "Well, no, you tell me what you're proud of." Because if we're discovering, how else do you do it?
Yeah. Give me the highest ABV, whatever you have. It's like, well, I don't like this, but here you go. It's like, well, give me what you like. Don't give me don't give me some crazy thing if this is like what you want,
right,
to be known for, or what you want, someone to come in and, oh, I heard you had this great X style beer. Okay, well, give me that, or what the closest thing you have to it.
Right. Absolutely. Let them guide the way. I'm not the one that's going to be the lead dog.
All right, so just kind of going through the chat here. So Zach is asking big questions. He says Grand Rapids is considered Beer City, USA, or at least Beer City, Michigan. What's the next beer mecca in Michigan? Where can you visit 7 to 8 breweries within a 10-mile radius? And he's just looking for a big road trip. So do you have any kind of like feelers for what that would be?
He said road trip, like, and then 10 miles, like, I was, and I keep falling back on the things that I've done, the places that I've been. We're talking about underrated places. I got to say, I think St. Clair Shores is one that doesn't get enough run, between Dragon's Landing, Copper Hop, Jamex, Baffin, but that's not going to be of road trip. And something in the chat box in Traverse City, I mean, yeah, or to be honest, if you're looking at something a little more simple, it would be west to Grand Rapids or. And here's one question that I can flip back. Has anybody been to Toledo? Not too far from here, down south, closer than maybe Grand Rapids would be. But if I was looking for something, yeah, I mean, John Farner says Detroit. That one's easy. But if you're looking for something a little more mobile, I mean, Grand Rapids has to be the easiest answer, I think.
Yeah, it's almost like,
Boring, though.
you hear Chicago having, so many, obviously not Michigan, but having so many breweries in Chicago itself. But I think I'd have to go with John. Like, Detroit has, if you're in the Grand Rapids, it's like, if you're in Grand Rapids, you might be like, oh, Grand Rapids, that's old hat. Like, let's try someplace that's not necessarily West Side. It almost seems like Michigan's so huge, it's like if you're in the West Side, try Detroit, or at least the area. Like one thing that I've always wanted to do is to do a Grand River Avenue brewery hop. You have Old Nations within that, maybe like a 10-mile radius of Grand River. You have Ellison, you have Ascension, you have Old Nation, and then all the Michigan or all the Detroit stuff. You have Brew Detroit, you have Batch, you have
Love Batch.
At that point, if you're saying 10 miles, you have
Motor City
the
Brew
stuff,
Works.
Motor City, you have just all that. Yeah, there's just so much stuff that's along that 10 miles north or south of Grand River Avenue that, Witch's Hat is within that area. You have other places, just even in South Lyon, that are kind of like in that stretch. So there's a lot of places. Yeah. And John says also Ferndale and Royal Oak, you have Urban Rest at that point. You have, I was going to say Black Lotus, but they're not there. That's another thing is Roke isn't there anymore.
North
So
South.
they're in Marshall with Dark Horse. So there's just a lot of places in that whole kind of radius that you can hit.
Do you think they'll be replaced? Roke? They've been pushing
another brewery.
Well, I mean, they've been trying to sell their beer equipment. They've got that space.
That's a big space, though.
I think that was their downfall.
Well, I mean, they're still kicking it, but yeah, I know they have connections with. Yeah, they have a connection with Dark Horse, so it's kind of odd, just in general.
I mean,
but I wouldn't.
That space was too big.
It was a huge space, and I wouldn't be surprised if some other place came and picked it up. I would be, Griffin Claw has so much. Oh, Puma Chug.
Oh, Puma Chug.
I'm Roke has that big basically production facility. If they don't, if the front of the house, if they,
it's a warehouse.
If they even close that a little bit, they'd have, I would say Griffin Claw might be a pretty big player in picking that up. They're in Birmingham and they're in Rochester, I think.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see Griffin Claw move into that space.
It's a good call. I mean, at some point, somebody's going to, because I mean, that brew equipment's been, I've seen it for sale for months and months now.
Yeah, they've announced that for quite a while.
Forgot about Puma Chug. It's a good call.
What's that all about?
What's that?
Puma Chug.
That's the thing. Puma Chug, you were talking earlier about one of those places that only has, like, we're open from 2 to 5. Show up and here it is. I think that scarcity that. But again, it's like when John mentioned Ferndale. When Axel went out, Ferndale Project showed up. There's somebody will always fill in the gaps. That's why I asked about Roke, because when one closes, another one opens.
Yeah,
It seems.
one door closes, another one opens.
So they say.
I've heard that once or twice.
Whoever they are.
All right, Zach. So give us your social media specifics. Where can we find you if we want to find you on social media?
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm on Facebook and Twitter at Zach with an H. My mom insists Zach with an H. Zach E. Clark. And then on Facebook, on Instagram at the Brewman Chew, and on TikTok at Brewman Chew. Instead of foo, it's brew. Because I'm only slightly creative.
Are you on Facebook at the Brewman Chew, or
no? At Facebook at Zach E. Clark.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Zach with an H. Yeah, no,
we're like
it's
5
good.
beers in at this point.
I mean, at this point, nobody's paying attention. But yeah, and I do my best to stay active on all the socials, and I enjoy the back and forth. So give me a follow, and we'll chat.
All right. So, is there anything else you want to plug besides Craft Beer Conversations? How often do you do that? Is it once a week or once every other week? Or
no, every Friday. And so when I say every Friday, my goal is to have a new one every single Friday. But the odds of me cooking out 52 a year is so
hard.
But so if it's not new on Friday, I'll find a good one and flip it back out and play it again. So every Friday, 7:40, 11:40, both in the morning, 4:40 and 9:40 p. You can hear it on WWJ, and then all those socials. Again, I'm super obnoxious on Twitter and whatnot. So if it's out there, I'm promoting it.
Is the spots that run on WWJ, are they're the condensed versions, right? They're not the full blown.
No, it's just so. And that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. I've been doing the minute-long features for about a year and a half now. For whatever reason, for the first year or so, I was cutting it down and just throwing all that great audio away because I'm a moron. But since the last few months, I've been repurposing all of it and putting the entire conversation out, and you can find that at Craft Beer Conversations wherever you get your podcasts. And the minute long features are great, and it's a big audience on WWJ. Get hundreds of thousands of listeners, and all that's well and good. But if you're really into craft beer, I encourage you to listen to the full length conversation, because it's not about me; it's about the stories and the people behind the beers that you love. It's the best.
All right, Zach. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, it's been a blast.
I know we've kind of been talking about this for a while, kind of trying to work something in, and hopefully everybody watching has enjoyed. And, anytime that you're available, I'd love to have you on, and we can talk Michigan beer, or, any kind of beer.
Oh, I'm glad to be on any time, and props to John Farner for connecting us. And I appreciate you having me, and been an absolute blast, and glad to do this anytime.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, really anytime. I mean, I love talking. It's fun to have like an intellectual conversation about different beer. I know we're like 5 beers in at this point.
We tried it first.
Yeah, we gave it the old college try, but so everybody watching, everybody watching. Thanks for checking in, Sean from Draft Therapy.
Thank you, Sean.
Zach from Craft Beer Conversations. Thanks so much for joining. Until next time. Support your local breweries wherever they are. And most importantly, don't forget to treat yourself to a little draft therapy. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you.
Yep.